wife.
Do you know what the hell we're doing today?
Well, this is kind of a special day. We're starting a new book of the Bible.
Indeed.
Something like that. Yeah. So what are we starting today?
We're starting Daniel. The book of Daniel.
Okay. All right. Not the tribe of Dan. Which I like the tribe of Dan. That was like one of my favorite things in that early bit, you know.
Dan the man.
Yeah. But now we're starting the book of Daniel. Daniel.
Not Danielle.
Yeah, no. I know. I was trying something cute and it didn't work. So.
Oh, Donnie boy.
So, what do you want to say anything about the book before we get into this, or where are we at with?
I have some shit to talk about when we get into it.
Okay, all right. So Daniel, here we go.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Okie dokie. All right, let's hop into the book of Daniel.
Okay.
Before we do, though, I thought I would read a little bit about who is Daniel? What's this book?
Yeah, who the
What's
fuck is he?
happening? I never heard of this guy, except I guess I did because I was right when I said that I thought there was some story about Daniel and some lions or something.
Right.
And yeah, that's going to happen.
Okay. I think there's a lot of I've heard a lot of stories like over the years about people putting the lion thing to the test. Maybe
I don't know what that means.
Well, I could be wrong, but I think if it's the lion story I'm thinking of, it's like you'll not receive any harm by being in a lion's den or something like that. And then some pastors over the years have decided to test that theory. And it doesn't always go swimmingly for them.
I was going to say, I bet that doesn't always go
well.
Now,
again, I don't know if this is the reference, but like if it is, then this has gotten some people deaded.
Well,
so I'm just saying,
unalived, guys. Let's not.
Yeah, don't go in a lion den. That's not smart.
So the book of Daniel was authored sometime during the 2nd century BCE.
Okay.
The consensus of modern scholarship is that the book dates to the period of 167 to 163 BCE.
So this is significantly after the Babylonian exile. Okay.
Now that's when it was written, but it takes place prior to that.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It is set during the 6th century BCE.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're looking so confused.
I am a bit confused because I feel like this makes the whole book retrofitted to what they want it to be.
Yes, but and also
right. Okay,
because it's referenced heavily in the New Testament.
Yes.
So it's not only retrofitted, but another religion entirely retrofits their religion too. Daniel, which is retrofitted. You know what I'm saying?
That's fun. Yeah. Okay.
So,
right. So this is more like we kind of got on this idea in Ezekiel where some of the ideas were starting to change, and this is kind of like furthering some of those ideas, maybe.
I don't know about that. We're getting back into Storyland, the first few chapters.
Okay.
But let me just continue. We'll talk about that.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
It's generally accepted that the book of Daniel originated as a collection of Aramaic court tales. And that's particularly true of, I think, the first 6 chapters are just stories. Aramaic stories.
Okay. All right.
Okay. They were later expanded by the Hebrew revelations.
Okay.
So they were Aramaic stories, and then the Hebrews, people who are Hebrew, speak Hebrew, do Hebrew, they stapled it together and were like, you're mine now.
Got it. Okay.
The court tales may have originally circulated independently, so they weren't like, stapled together.
Yeah.
6 stories. Here you go.
So some of these ideas might have come from earlier on. They just weren't put together until later. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. I'm just trying to make sure I understood.
Yep. They circulated independently, but the edited collection was probably composed in the 3rd or early 2nd century BCE.
Okay.
So we've got this whole wide swath of like 400 years between when it takes place versus all the way 400 years later when it was actually written.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
The author and or editor was probably an educated Jewish person, knowledgeable in Greek learning, and of high standing in his own community.
So not Daniel.
Not Daniel.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
And the reason that I emphasized knowledgeable in Greek learning is because there were several Greek translations of these stories as well.
Oh.
And they don't all match up exactly the same.
Okay.
So we've got Aramaic, Hebrew, and Greek versions of these stories running around.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
But somebody, again, picked up the Aramaic ones, wrote them in Hebrew, stapled them together, and said, let's call it done.
Sure.
Okay?
Okay.
So it's possible that the name... Oh, wait. Yeah. It's possible that the name of Daniel was chosen for the hero of the book because of his reputation as a wise seer in Hebrew tradition.
Okay.
So that's something
So
that
one of
the
those
name
oral
indicates.
things that kind of got handed down or whatever, and this is they're just okay. So it made sense to make this name, person, whatever,
Yeah.
represent this book.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily these stories are not necessarily all quote unquote Daniel. Necessarily. I'm just saying because, like you said, that they picked the name Daniel, so it doesn't sound like it's necessarily written about a guy named Daniel.
Correct.
Okay.
But a character named Daniel does play the major part in the books.
Sure.
In the book.
Right.
So-
Because that name or that person permeated Jewish culture
Sure.
or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't quite following, so I just want to make sure.
Got it.
So we've got a person Daniel versus a character Daniel. And
I'm just saying, as opposed to like Ezekiel wrote Ezekiel, right? Or
Okay.
Isaiah wrote Isaiah.
Got
or,
it.
You know, like not necessarily because those were also written by other
Heavily-
people and edited by other people
Yeah.
or something too. But essentially, those books were based on a character that actually did something along those lines.
There's not a Daniel. Sorry, I'm having a hard time with his name. There's not a Daniel who sat down and wrote some stories.
Got it.
So this book is not written by Daniel.
And the actions weren't necessarily taken by a person named Daniel.
Correct.
It's just Daniel ends up representing the person that is taking the actions.
Correct.
Got it.
I think we're all clear now.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yep. You're good. Daniel is one of a large number of Jewish apocalypse stories.
Okay.
And all of these
We all like a good apocalypse story.
Well, all of these kinds of stories are good grief, pseudonymous,
Okay.
anonymous,
Yeah.
pseudonym,
Pseudonym. Yeah. Okay.
pseudonymous.
Yeah, I thought that's what it was.
Okay,
But I don't know.
I'm really sorry. I'm just having so many problems. I should probably not be doing this right now, but I'm gonna just go ahead.
Yeah, just truck on
Power
through.
through. Yeah. So the apocalypse stories are not like, and then a nuclear bomb went off, and the story was about how mankind survived afterwards.
Okay.
The apocalypse stories are about the end of time because God comes and smites everything.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like end of days apocalypse.
Well, what? Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
I'm confused. Okay, so this. I'm struggling here because you said that this is set at like 600 BCE.
Yes, but in those stories where it takes place, they foretell some things that are to come.
Okay, so people 400 years later are taking some random stories from this time frame, and they're saying, "Look at these prophecies that are from let's call him Daniel," and they're going, "There's some bad shit that's going to happen at some point in the future based on these writings." Even though when they were written at the same time as the other Babylonian exile prophets that were predicting the demise of Israel because of Babylon. But now that it's past that, we have to like make it mean something else probably. So since we're 400 years later, we can make this sound really smart and about something else.
Sure.
That's how it sounds to me. That's what it sounds
you're
like.
not
You're
far
saying,
off.
it sounds like that's what you're telling me.
You're not far off.
Okay.
So the first several chapters, like 1 through 6, remember, I told you are like stories.
Yeah.
They are about this guy named Daniel who was a noble exiled at Babylon.
Okay.
And he was exiled there when he was a child, and it's about how he and his buddies were brought up in the Babylon court.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And that's the first 6 chapters. The ones after that are something different.
Got it.
Okay? And I'll get into that in a minute.
Okay.
Okay? Christian interpreters have always viewed the stories recorded in Daniel as predicting events in the New Testament. Okay? Because we've got the Son of God is mentioned, and the Son of Man, and Christ and the Antichrist, that kind of thing. We've got this stuff happening.
Really?
Well, keep in mind, Christ is not a name.
No, I know.
It's a title.
Correct.
So, it's actually supposed to be like Jesus the Christ, not Jesus Christ.
Yeah. No, I got it.
So when they say Christ and the Antichrist, they're not like talking about Jesus per se.
For the future, the savior of whatever.
Right, and they talk about a Messiah.
Sure.
Like even Ezekiel talked about a Messiah.
Sure.
So,
but not the Christ or
not specifically Jesus Christ. This like some Messiah guy. And so this is like, I know, right? Like some Messiah guy, like he's totally a Christ. Totally.
Right.
Like whatever that means, Yeah. And the book's intended audience, though, we have to keep in mind, is the Jews of the 2nd century BCE.
Sure.
Not Christians.
Right.
So I really appreciated that note because it serves as a solid reminder that this was not written to appease a Christian audience to retrofit their shit.
No, Christianity took this and ran with it.
Usurped it, yes. Yeah. And made their religion fit around all of these puzzle pieces.
Sure.
Which, very clever, very well done.
Yeah.
But stop.
I mean, if you want to create a new religion or a new group or a new sect in a religion, it definitely helps to take the old stuff and use it to base your new ideas off of. And that way you can get people to believe it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So if you want to break away, like, hey, this is what's happened. And now we're going to be separate over here because those people got it wrong. Yeah.
So I don't know. Whatever.
Sure. I'm curious about this book. This book.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I wanted to say chapter.
I wanted to say all of this before we get into it because it to me it matters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The book can be divided into 2 parts, like I said. The first 6 chapters are a set of 6 court tales. Okay. Which is what I said.
Yeah.
And they were mostly written in Aramaic.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which kind of what I said. The next chapters 7 through 12 are 4 apocalyptic visions, mostly written in Hebrew.
Okay.
So there's that. Now, having said that, the Deuterocanonical books contain 3 additional sections.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to get my hands on these.
The Deuterocanonical. What does that mean exactly?
It just means that there were 3 stories running around back then that sometimes were in versions and sometimes were not.
Got it.
So for whatever reason, these were left out of the final product.
Okay.
But they were present at the same time.
All right.
Say they're stories that were there.
I'd be curious if they're still in the Jewish version of whatever, if this is something that's in there or what. I don't even know if Daniel's in there for sure, but I would assume it is.
I'd have to look. I think so, but I don't fucking know.
All right.
Oh no, I do know. I did see this. It is listed as one of the writings instead of one of the prophets.
Okay. All right.
So, because of the time period that they were putting all this together, this one was a latecomer,
right?
And so they stuck it in the writings. Also because it's stories instead of.
And I would also imagine that this holds a lot more weight for Christians, and therefore during the split between Christianity and Judaism, probably it gave this less weight with the Jewish community than it did. You know what I mean? Like they might have tried to distance themselves from this a bit.
Right. Yeah. No doubt. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So the 3 stories that are left out that, again, I'm really going to try to get my hands on are the Prayer of Azariah and Song of the 3 Holy Children. That's one.
All right.
The next one is Susanna.
Yeah. Oh, Susanna. Yeah. Sorry.
And the third one, this is the one I really want. Bel and the Dragon. Right?
Yeah.
We've heard reference to that before.
We have. I don't know where, but
somewhere in our readings.
Sure.
But yeah, I want these.
Right.
I want to read them. And I think if we are able to find copies or translations online or something,
right.
When we get to the end of what is this, Daniel? Right. I'd like to read those 3. Yeah. As though they are part of, because they, I think, should be. They were running around at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
This book is filled with monsters, angels, and numerology drawn from a wide range of various sources.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the, Aramaic and There's some Persian stuff. So
right.
just like very exciting.
Yeah.
The book of Daniel is a composite text of dubious historicity, meaning it's not telling you shit that actually happened, or it's recording events that may or may not be exactly how they went down.
Right.
And these are from various genres, and Daniel himself is a legendary figure.
Got
so
it.
he's not a real guy.
So this is just it's a fiction.
That's why it's in the writings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me tell you a little bit more. Oh, you know what? No, that was the end of the intro. Apologies.
Okay.
Then it gets into my notes.
Sounds good.
My notes is.
Yeah.
So are we ready to start this chapter finally?
I'm ready. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Daniel now.
Sure.
Daniel, chapter 1.
Daniel, chapter 1.
In the 3rd year of the reign of Joachim, king of Judah.
So we're back there. Okay.
Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it.
Sounds familiar.
Remember?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the Lord delivered Joachim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God, which we recall this.
Right.
These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylonia and put it in the treasure house of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's when Ezekiel went.
Yeah. Young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace.
Okay.
So here's the thing. He wanted them like super handsome so that they looked great. So no ugly people.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And he wanted them to be really smart so he could train them up, because the Chaldeans were the main people at this point of the Babylonians.
Oh, okay.
And remember, they were the smart astrology guys.
Yeah.
So a lot of the Babylonian people were of Chaldean, either like that's what they were, or they were of Chaldean descent.
Got it.
And that came straight from my notes. I'm not just pulling that out of my ass. I saw the look on your face. But that's why he wanted smart kids that were handsome.
Got it.
Okay. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. Ooh.
Okay.
They were to be trained for 3 years. And after that, they were to enter the king's service.
Okay.
So he's basically like taking kids from somewhere else, and he's like, you're my servant now, and you will learn our ways.
Got it.
Which is interesting to me. It makes me think of in Game of Thrones, Theon. He was the one that was not related to Jon Snow and the family, but they took him in, and he was actually from a different family.
Right.
But they always treated him as though he was part of the family.
Yeah.
So it makes me feel like it's kind of that kind of thing, you know? Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief official gave them new names. To Daniel, the name Belteshazzar. To Hananiah, Shadrach. To Mishael, Meshash. And to Azariah, Abednego.
Okay. All right.
So they did have their, Jewish names, but now they have Babylonian names because you're a Babylonian now.
Right.
Make peace with that.
Yep.
But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. And he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. Now, God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel, but the official told Daniel, I am afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you. He's like, I can only do so much, my guy.
Right, yeah.
Daniel then said to the guard whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. So he's like, just try it.
Sure.
So the dude agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, They looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food.
I'm sure this was God's doing.
Oh, it was.
Something.
It was. Yeah,
right,
God's going to play a big part in this.
Got it.
Yep,
I can already tell that this is going to be a sickening amount of like, God did this for them and God da-da-da-da.
It reminds me of like Moses and the Pharaoh, right? Like when Moses was like, I'm totally want to do this. And the Pharaoh was like, no. And he was like, just try me.
Right.
And then, of course, God had Moses' back, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. So he's like, all right, as long as you don't look like shit.
Right.
I'm fine with that, whatevs.
Yeah.
To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. Because of course he could. He's also Joseph.
Right. No, I was about to say, it sounds very similar to Joseph. Yeah.
Yes. At the end of the time set by the king to bring them into his service, the chief official presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service.
Okay.
So they are in.
Yeah.
In every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom.
Wow.
And Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. The end.
Oh, okay.
That's the first chapter.
Got it.
Okay?
So that's our introduction to Daniel.
Which apparently the first chapter was written a lot later and as an intro to this. I do have a little note about that.
We can't just jump right in. We gotta give a little bit of backstory here.
Yeah, chapter 1 was apparently added as an introduction to the tales when they were collected around the end of the 3rd century BCE. Okay. And this chapter talks about the 3 guys and Daniel and his 3 guys.
I can actually appreciate that because we have actually been talking all through the Bible how there's a very much a lack of character development.
Yeah.
Right. And now we finally have some character development.
Right.
Which is a nice change, actually.
It is. It's like, hey, remember back when this war shit was happening?
Right.
And remember when that king was stealing people? Remember? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I do remember that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find it very helpful.
I will say that knowing that this is written so far after these events hypothetically took place does take away from the magic that maybe some people that read this that think that this is a real thing might feel. Yeah. So not that I would feel the magic either way because I don't believe in God.
Right.
But it does strike more of this is like a fanfic of biblical writings or something. Yeah.
Fanfic of the times.
Right. Yeah. So, but that being said, I might be able to enjoy this book with...
You might be able to enjoy the first 6 chapters, which are story. Let us not forget that what comes after is something different.
Right. No, I got it. Yeah, but this type of writing is a somewhat...
It's palatable.
Yeah. That's all I'm going to say for now.
Yeah.
Because I don't really know much about Daniel, and I don't know much about the chapters after the first 6 chapters, or really any of them. But, I mean... So far, so good.
So far, so good, right?
We have a story going.
I'm really intrigued. I want to see what happens next. I'm in.
Yeah.
I mean, we're reading it. We got to read it anyway.
Sure.
I would like to be enthusiastic rather than, God damn it, I hate this fucking book.
Definitely.
So I'm in.
Definitely. All right. Well, that was the first chapter of Daniel.
Sure as fuck was.
And we will be back tomorrow with...
Daniel, chapter 2.
All right. We'll see you then.
Bye. Husband.
Wife.
Do you know where we are today and how the hell we got here?
Well, we are in Daniel, the book of Daniel now.
We are in the book of Daniel.
And we just finished with Daniel chapter 1.
Yep.
And in that chapter, we're kind of getting the backstory on Daniel. At least that's how it comes across, I think. So, yeah.
It's like an intro.
Right. And we're back in the Babylonian exile.
Right.
And Daniel was one of the people that was taken in that first round of exiling, where they took the best and the brightest and the youngest and the prettiest and the most beautiful and whatever. And so they took them to Babylon. And these were Daniel and some other kids that they mentioned.
His buddies,
yeah.
His bros, his homies.
Were young and godly, apparently. And they were told that they had to eat certain things, but they were like, nah, man. And they went and talked to the guard, and they're like, can you help us out here, man? Like, we're and he's like, I don't know, you guys might not look as good as other people when you don't eat the right things, and like, just give us a chance. And then they did, and everything worked out because God, I guess, whatever. And then they became the best and the brightest, and that's where we are.
That is an amazing recap. Yes, that's what happened, or thereabouts.
I mean, it was very storyline driven.
Yes.
So, like, to tell the synopsis of what happened, I kind of have to tell the story.
It's true.
And so, to shorten the story, I have to make it sound stupid.
Yes.
And so that's what I did.
You succeeded. You succeeded. Good job.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I was really going for like the best synopsis of Daniel chapter 1 ever.
You win.
And I think I fell a little short.
No, I think you won.
I won?
Yeah,
okay, all right, yeah. So that was Daniel chapter 1.
Sure as fuck was.
Which means that today we're getting into
Daniel chapter 2.
All right, let's do this.
Okie dokie. Okay, we are hopping into the second chapter.
Yes.
Of Big D.
A Big D. Is this the new? Okay,
that's his name.
And instead of Easy Kyle, now we're in Big D.
Sure as fuck are.
All right. So Daniel then.
Daniel, yeah. Just as a reminder, this book is divided into 2 parts, and we are still in the first part,
right?
Which is chapters 1 through 6.
Is this a shorter book?
Yeah, there's only 12 chapters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like it might be, but I wasn't sure. So.
Yeah. And the first 6 are a set of court tales.
Okay.
And they're basically about like Daniel and his buddies and how they are like challenged to do godly things, and then God helps them and they succeed. Yay!
How wonderful.
And then 7 through 12 are about 4 apocalyptic visions.
Of course.
And then there's 3 stories that are left out of our Bible that were in some of the earlier renditions that we're also going to read later.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
So, all right, let's get over here into chapter 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the 2nd year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, as you do.
Yeah.
His mind was troubled and he could not sleep. He got trouble right here in his brain hole.
Yeah.
So the king summoned the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to tell him what he had dreamed.
Okay.
When they came in and stood before the king, he said to them, "I've had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means."
This sounds very much like the story of Joseph, and yeah,
it does. Yeah,
I mean, like this is
that story, but later.
It's like the same story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they're not very imaginative back then.
Right. Well, and I feel as we're getting into some of these later books, they steal heavily from older stories in the Bible.
Yeah, there's only like 10 major stories, and they just recycle them.
Yeah.
In the whole world.
You kind of talked to me about that before, actually. And it's not entirely untrue.
It's not entirely untrue.
As far as like the themes behind the stories and things like that. So.
Right. Then the astrologers answered the king, "May the king live forever. Dude, tell your servants the dream and we'll totally interpret it."
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
But the king replied to the astrologers, "This is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, so you better even
you have to know what the dream was before we even get into this shit.
Yeah.
And you have to have it interpreted.
Yeah.
Okay.
So tell me what I dreamed, and then tell me what it means."
This seems a little the bar is a little high here, man.
But I mean, it's a good way to test out your prophets.
I guess.
Because if you can't do that, I will have you cut into fucking pieces.
Oh.
And your houses turned into piles of fucking rubble.
I would like to resign. Thank you.
I am not an astrologer. I am a cook.
I no longer want this job.
I am the palace gardener.
Thanks anyway.
Bye.
Right.
But if you tell me the dream and explain it, you will receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. That's just what I wanted.
How well can you guess?
So tell me the dream and interpret it for me. Once more, they replied, let the king tell his servants the dream and we will interpret it. Then the king answered, I am certain that you are trying to gain time because you realize that this is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me the dream, there is only one penalty for you. You have conspired to tell me misleading and wicked things, hoping the situation will change. So then, tell me the fucking dream.
Wow.
And I will know that you can interpret it for me.
I think these guys got into something they weren't this is some bullshit.
They're like,
actually.
this is actually not what I signed up for.
Right?
That is not in my contract.
Yeah,
Union.
Workers' rights were apparently not a thing back then.
Not high on the priority list.
Yeah.
The astrologers answered the king, there is no one on earth who can do what this king asks. No king, however great and mighty, has ever asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or astrologer.
I feel like Daniel is going to get these fuckers chopped into bits.
I feel like they're going to get themselves chopped into bits. What the king asks is too difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, they're whiny, but they're right.
Yeah.
No one can reveal it to the king except the gods, and they do not live among humans. Oh.
Okay.
I mean, they're not wrong.
Right.
This made the king so angry and furious that he ordered the execution of all the wise men of Babylon.
Jesus Christ.
That'll learn him.
Wow. That escalated quickly.
He was newts.
I see why God hired this guy.
Yeah, he's fucking bananas.
Right?
So the decree was issued to put the wise men to death, and men were sent to look for Daniel and his friends to put them to death.
Oh.
Because they're part of his team, right?
Oh, because they, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
They're about to get it.
So, like,
everybody.
wait, he's about to kill everybody.
Everybody.
This is, okay.
Everybody
right.
in the court gets chopped up.
You know, I would feel kind of shitty, like, if I was one of these Babylonian, or one of these Israelites that got, like, brought over because I was smart and beautiful and whatever, and, like, you're one of the smart people who's also a prophet, whatever. You're that person. You're wise. You're that thing.
You got a good job. You're raising up. And sight.
And because you can't tell me what my dream was, I'm going to kill you now.
Yep. That's how it be.
It's fucked.
When Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, had gone out to put to death the wise men of Babylon, Daniel spoke to him with wisdom and tact. He asked the king's officer, why did the king issue such a harsh decree? ?
Yeah.
Arioch then explained the matter to Daniel. At this, Daniel went into the king and asked for time so that he might interpret the dream for him.
I have a problem with this scenario.
I do too.
Because if you got sent out by your king, who is very fickle and petty, obviously, do you entertain this kid who is going to rectify things for you?
Yeah, like, hey. Okay, look, I'm going to play the guard.
Right.
And you play the kid.
Got it.
Ready?
Yeah.
Hey, kid.
Yeah.
I have to kill you.
Why?
I mean, here's the way the story should go. Don't fucking worry about it. You're dead. Boom. Done.
That's the way it should go. Yeah, that's the way it would have gone. But okay, God.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So instead it's, hey, kid.
Yeah. What's up?
I have to kill you. I'm not going to do it until we play 20 questions, though.
Yeah.
Go.
So what are you killing me for?
Is it blue? Wait, no, you're guessing. That's right. Okay, sorry. Do it again.
What are you killing me for?
I am killing you for the king.
Why is the king killing me?
'Cause he's a wackadoodle. I don't know. You know the king, how he be.
But like, what is his reason for doing
something
it?
About a fucking dream or some shit. You know what? I'm gonna not kill you yet. Why don't you go in and ask him? Because I didn't really understand what was happening because I'm not a fucking wise man.
Right, yeah.
All right. So then Daniel returned to his house. Oh, and then he just went, right on in and was like, hey, king, what up?
Yeah, that's odd. Like, you're going
You just went in there to the king.
You're going from being executed by the king to just walking in and talking.
He's like, hang on. Wait. Hold on. I got to run this by the king right quick.
Hey, this kid that you conquered his land and killed his people, he's got a really great idea that he wants to run by you, I think.
Yeah. He would like to confront your ass. How about, are you okay with that, king?
Right.
Yeah, no.
No, that's not how that works.
This would not happen in any world.
This is unrealistic.
Yeah. So stupid.
It is.
All right. Sorry. Go ahead, Daniel.
It's so obviously written by people who just really want to make a great story about God.
It's not a very great story,
it's
though.
It's not, because it's not believable.
I know.
So
they should have asked somebody like me to write it. I could do a better job.
Yeah.
Then Daniel returned to his house because they asked for time. I thought that's what the other dudes asked for.
Yeah.
But this guy asked for time, and the king's like, sure.
But if he can interpret dreams and know dreams, why does he need time?
He's got to pray first.
But so God's on a time frame? Like God's got to...
No, Daniel's like, hey, can I have some time? I have to go pray to ask God to tell me what your dream was.
Okay. All right.
Like, I don't just know it.
But he had no patience with the other ones.
That's what I'm saying. Like, why did Daniel get favor?
And they're probably already chopped into bits at this point. They are. You know, like they're like alligator food.
It ain't fair.
No.
Then Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah.
Okay.
He urged them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Oh, I guess they hadn't been executed yet.
Okay. All right. At least not all of them.
Not all of them, anyway.
But I bet those ones that were right there. The ones in the court. He probably just had them, beheaded right there.
Yeah. He's like, you're done, son.
Yeah.
Yep.
If I had to guess.
And if I had heard that news and I wasn't living in the court, I would have my rake and my gardener hat, and I would be like, no wise men here.
Right. Yep. If I were Daniel, if I were anybody that was in this scenario, and I didn't have an immediate answer, I'd be asking for time and to be able to go to my house and then fucking getting lost.
Pack and leave. Or don't even pack. You don't even need clean underwear.
Right. Just get the fuck out of there.
I don't mind my underwear being dirty and a week old.
I hear China's good this time of year.
Because you know what? Living is better than not living.
Right?
Yeah. So, whatever. During the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision.
Of course it was, because God, know.
Then Daniel praised the God of heaven and said, praise be to his name of God forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons. He deposes kings and raises up others. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors. You have given me wisdom and power. You have made known to me what we asked of you. You have made known to us the dream of the king.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I don't believe this.
No, not even a little.
Yeah.
No. I mean, do you know what I dreamed last night?
No.
I don't know what you dreamed either.
Right.
And
if you said that you were going to chop me into bits because I couldn't come up with it, I'd probably just leave.
Or call the FBI.
Yeah. They tried to recruit you today.
Somebody did.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the FBI, but they said they were. I'm like, you clearly have not met me because A, I'm not the right body type, and B, I cannot keep my fucking mouth shut. I would be a terrible spy. I can't keep fucking secrets.
No, they're not all spies. Some of them are just investigators and stuff.
I can't investigate shit.
I don't know. Whatever. You investigate the Bible.
I mean,
maybe that's what they're basing it off of. They're like,
okay.
this woman, this
bitch over here. You wanted to say
she's investigating that Bible, right? Good. Huh?
Listen to this bitch. She comes across as dumber than the everyman. That's so smart. We need this one. Yeah.
We also I have to share this.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is real or not, so I did send them an email back because I'm curious because it was sent. The email seemed very legitimate. But it's got to be a scam. It's got to be a scam.
It's a scam.
It's got to be a scam.
I would not even have given it the time of day.
I probably shouldn't have, but I did. But they're offering us like $25,000 for our voices.
Sure they
we're
are.
just like that amazing for our podcast.
Sure we are.
Yeah. I don't know, but it was from like I looked up the company. It's not completely illegitimate.
It's not. You're right.
And it didn't come from like a spammy email address. So like
you're right.
I don't know. Is it real?
No.
I doubt it.
It's not real.
$25,000?
No, but ain't
Come
nobody
on.
giving us $25,000.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Nobody's giving us that.
Our podcast hasn't made $25,000 over the entire time it's existed.
4 years. That's awesome.
I don't think we've even made like the first thing.
$1,000.
Right. Yeah. Well, no, we've made probably that much.
In 4 years?
In total, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
$1,000 to $2,000.
We're under the $5,000 mark.
Oh, for sure. Honestly, I'm impressed if we made over $1,000.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So then Daniel went to Arioch, the guard guy, whom the king had appointed to execute the wise men of Babylon, who failed at his fucking duty. Yeah. I will just put that out there.
He did.
And said to him, hey, wait, do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Hang on. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him.
Wait, this one kid's going to save the rest of them?
Yeah.
I thought they were just trying to save themselves. And why would this king save the rest of the wise men if... Wouldn't they all have to be able to do it? Like, why is it dependent on anybody, one person? That's weird.
Like, one could tell me, so therefore I'll kill none?
Right.
Or how about I'll kill all of them except for this one?
I mean, I'm all for not killing people, right?
Yeah.
So,
I can see why Daniel's like, wait, don't kill everybody. But I can't see why the king would listen.
Right.
He's already bananas.
He seems very petty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Arioch took Daniel to the king at once and said, I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can tell the king what his fucking dream means.
A man, huh? Because the last I heard he was like 10.
Well, now he's a man. He must be 12.
Oh, okay.
You know, the way it be.
Yeah.
Okay. The king asked Daniel, also called Belteshazzar.
But he doesn't go by that because he refused to.
Yeah.
Right?
He got renamed and he was like, no, thanks.
Sure.
So the king asked, are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it? Daniel replied, no wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Your dream and the visions that passed through your mind as you were lying in bed are these. As your majesty was lying there, your mind turned to things to come, and the revealer of mysteries showed you what is going to happen. As for me, this mystery has been revealed to me not because I have greater wisdom than anyone else alive, but so that your majesty may know the interpretation and that you may understand what went through your mind.
Right. So what is it?
Fucking get there.
Yeah, because this sounds like a fucking palm reading to me.
He's like, the answer to your question, which I'm about to give you,
is the answer.
And it's not the answer you expected, but it's the answer you deserve.
Right.
And the question is a really good question to which an answer is absolutely necessary. Like, you've gone on for 10 fucking minutes. What is the fucking answer?
Also, you'll meet someone dark, handsome, and whatever.
Yeah.
What's the normal thing that happens?
Dark, handsome, and whatever.
You know,
you'll have good fortune all your days. You'll be rich and famous or whatever.
The cookie, fortune cookies things. Yeah. Although they aren't really fortunes anymore.
Now they say oxygen is air. Like, thank you for that information. I will call the press.
I feel like they must have got sued.
They must have.
Like, what happened to fortune cookies?
They're not fortunes. They're facts.
Yeah, they're dumb.
Their facts are observations.
I do not like fortune cookies anymore.
No, they piss me off every time. Mm-hmm. I don't want them anymore.
No.
I'm like, don't put that shit in my Chinese food to go thing because it's when I see it, I'm going to be angry.
Yeah, they used to be fun and now they suck.
They suck.
Yeah.
You know what? There's always one in the bunch that fucking has to complain. And this is why we can't have nice things. All right, ready?
Yes.
Okay, so Daniel's talking about this dream and not answering it, but promising he's about to.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Your Majesty looked, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance.
It sounds like he's describing it, though. It sounds like he's actually knowing the dream here.
He is. The head of the statue was made of pure gold.
Ooh.
Its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay.
This statue sounds very confused as to what it wants to be.
This
when it
statue
grows up.
is trying out different things.
Yeah.
don't judge.
I'm not judging. I'm just saying it doesn't know.
Maybe it's
what it
all
is.
things at once.
I guess.
Why does it have to decide?
I feel like the person that made it would have a really tough time making all these things work together.
Well, that would be God. Check with him.
Okay. All right.
While you were out watching, this is Daniel still talking.
Right.
While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. I hate it when things land on my piggies. Mm-hmm. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were all broken to pieces and became like chaff on a threshing floor in the summer.
I don't think gold and silver and iron, for that matter, just shatter into pieces.
This is a dream. Okay. Fuck off. All right. You don't know. All right. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace, continues Daniel.
Okay.
Continue, Daniel.
Some strong wind.
Yeah, but the rock in the dream.
Yeah.
It's strong wind in the dream.
I know. I got it.
But the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream. And now we will interpret it to the king.
Oh,
I'm eager for this.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, me too.
Your Majesty, you are the King of Kings. The God of heaven has given you dominion and power and might and glory. In your hands he has placed all mankind and the beasts of the field and the birds in the sky. Wherever they live, he has made you ruler over them all. You are that head of gold. After you, another kingdom will rise, inferior to yours. Next, a third kingdom, one of bronze, will rule over the whole earth. Finally, there will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron. For iron breaks and smashes everything. And as iron breaks things to pieces, so it will crush and break all the others. Just as you saw that the feet and toes were partly of baked clay and partly of iron, so this will be a divided kingdom. Yet it will have some of the strength of iron in it, even as you saw iron mixed with clay. As the toe, I'm so not following this, just so you know.
I mean, I'm trying. Yeah. I'm trying. I feel like this, I'm not sure this is the best message to give to this guy.
He's like, you totally fucking suck, and someday you'll die, and kingdoms will come after you. So get over yourself.
He's definitely promoting Nebuchadnezzar, right? He's saying you're awesome, but once you're done, it's going to move along,
your
right?
Your kingdom's going to...
And I feel like the description of the iron and the clay is kind of a reference to the southern tribes and the northern tribes of Israel.
Okay.
Possibly.
I don't think so.
Well, but he's talking about bringing those things together, right? And so there's this whole idea in the Old Testament that we've been going over thus far, where they've been talking about bringing these tribes back together. In fact, in Ezekiel, they were stacking them, in a 7-layer salad type deal, right? And so I feel like this is them trying to come back together, because we even commented in Ezekiel where, many of these tribes don't exist anymore,
right?
Or at least in any recognizable form,
right?
So the fact that they're trying to bring them back together is more of a mental exercise than it is a realistic exercise, right? And so a lot of these things are portrayed through visions, and this is one of those things where the clay to me kind of represents the idols, and the iron represents that unmovable. I don't know why they're using iron, because God early on didn't like iron, but then later there were some references where iron was used to represent God too, as a strong binding
unbreakable
metal, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a representation of God mixed with idols, and that they'll rebuild bigger than ever, and
the idols will get broken down. The iron will
eventually get broken down, and the iron will stay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's how I'm feeling about this. I'm not really sure what all the gold and bronze and all that shit is, but I'm assuming it's other kingdoms. Other kingdoms are going to fight for this this area that eventually will just get ground down to God's kingdom.
Right.
So,
as the toes were partly iron and partly clay, so this kingdom will be partly strong and partly brittle. And just as you saw the iron mixed with baked clay, So the people will be a mixture and will not remain united any more than iron mixes with clay.
Okay.
In the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it will itself endure forever. This is the meaning of the vision of the rock cut out of the mountain, but not by human hands, a rock that broke the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold to pieces. The great God has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. You know, because I said so.
Right. But again, even though maybe he's getting this dream correct, I guess, according to this story.
Right.
The dream is still very vague.
Yeah.
And, you know, the interpretation of it here, he's not really giving any specifics as to what it means.
Yeah.
I think he's just relying on like, this still sounds very much like a palm reading where you're like, you're going to have awesome things happen to you. And then eventually someday when you're old, you're going to die. Right.
Although
we're going to throw in that bad stuff at the end.
Well,
but
sometimes they're like, ooh, Wednesday's going to be a very unlucky day for you.
Sure.
Stay home because you might run into trouble. Like maybe you'll get a parking ticket,
Right.
or maybe you'll fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. A meteor might land on your house.
And then if you do go out Wednesday,
Yeah.
and you trip over a crack,
then you're like, God damn it, they were
I
right.
should have stayed home on Wednesday. God damn it. Yeah.
You're like, I have a hangnail.
Right.
Fucking Wednesday.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
This is it's a dream, and moreover, it's a weird dream. And there's lots of fucking medals in a statue. And okay, I guess God told you what it means. Like, this makes no sense because really, they're just taking too many ideas and trying to make it all work together.
Yeah.
Because Nebuchadnezzar, yes, was supposedly the tool of God, but now we're getting this like side of him where he literally is talking to prophets of God about what his dreams mean, and then I guess he's probably going to accept this interpretation.
I don't know.
Well, there's more Daniel, so I'm assuming it gets accepted.
At least he doesn't kill him.
So I don't know. Whatever. It is what it is. Right?
Then
Yeah, sorry.
King Nebuchadnezzar fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor and ordered that an offering and incense be presented to
For
him.
fuck's sake.
That sigh that you gave.
Yeah.
It was the heaviest sigh in the world. You're so disappointed.
This guy was ready to chop them all into bits.
And now he's bowing
falling
to him.
prostrate in front of them.
Yeah.
Like, what? Come on.
Yep.
Give me a fucking break.
The king then said to Daniel, surely your God is the God of gods.
Oh, for Jesus.
And the Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery. Then the king placed Daniel in a high position and lavished many gifts on him, instead of killing him.
Yeah.
He made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon and placed him in charge of all its wise men, kind of like Pharaoh did with Joseph.
Yeah, no, it's the exact same fucking story.
Right?
Yeah. Only this is more God-centric.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The whole Joseph story, there was God in there, but not the same way.
Yeah. Joseph had the power to interpret dreams, but he didn't talk to God about it.
Well, we don't know that for sure.
I mean, that wasn't in the story at any rate.
Right.
Whereas Daniel's like, hang on, let me go talk to God.
Well, and we're being told to believe, moreover, that this Nebuchadnezzar king guy is like impressed with this God.
Yeah.
When he's got his own fucking gods.
Yeah.
Not only that, but he's just conquered so many fucking lands.
Right.
He probably thinks he's God.
Yeah.
I don't really believe that he's actually, falling over backwards over this goddamn person who's quoting his God to him. I don't believe that.
No, I don't either. Moreover, at Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, his three friends, his homies.
Right.
The king appointed them administrators over the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court. The end.
Okay. Man, this is all working out just swimmingly for them, isn't it? Man.
Thank goodness.
I can't imagine if he hadn't got this. I mean, if he hadn't got this right, shit, they would have all just died. Right? Hell, if he hadn't spoke up and that guard hadn't, pushed his message over to the king, they'd all died.
Yep.
But no, God apparently had their back, and we got to believe, because they're writing about this like 400 years later that this actually happened.
Exactly.
So you gotta believe, man.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about. If you can't believe that somebody wrote that's 400 years later and got it exactly right how it happened, then what the fuck are you doing here? I don't know. This is the Bible, man. This is the Word of God, even if it's 400 years later. Isn't that right? That's what we're supposed to get from this?
I guess. I don't know. I'm just sitting at my table. It just sounds
like some really well-written bullshit is what it sounds like to me.
It sounds like some poorly written bullshit to me.
What I meant. But I mean, it's better than some of the other stuff we've read. It
is. Yeah, you're right. I don't want to give it too much hell.
But I'm right. I can't. It's just too over the top, though. This is too over the top.
Like you said, they're trying to do too much and stuff too many things into it.
Right. Yeah. So it makes it very unbelievable. And knowing when this was written also does not help me with that either.
Right. It's like, oh, you're so silly.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, is that all we got for today?
That's all we got for today.
All right. Well, that was Daniel chapter 2.
Sure as fuck was.
Which means that we'll be back tomorrow with
Big D chapter 3.
All right. We'll see you then.
Bye. Husband.
Wife.
Do you remember what happened yesterday and where the hell we are today?
Well, yesterday we read Daniel chapter 2.
We did.
And in that chapter, we're reading about Nebuchadnezzar's dream and how he was like getting people that he needed to interpret it. And then when No,
not just interpret it. He was like, what did I dream?
Yeah.
Tell me. What did I dream?
They weren't. Yeah. They had to know what he dreamt and how to interpret it. And the ones that he talked to first couldn't. So he's like, I'm going to chop you into bits. I'm going to kill you. And then I'm going to kill all the fucking people that are real smart. Because
fuck all of you.
You don't know what I dreamt. Yeah. So I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
And then Daniel got summoned to go get killed. And Daniel's like, whoa, yo, hey, can I talk to the king? And then the guy was like, sure.
Of course.
Why not? Why wouldn't you be able to talk to the king?
Yeah, everybody could talk to the king.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
That's normal. You just get to go in and talk to the king as a 10-year-old little boy. I don't
think he was 10, but sure.
Whatever. He was young.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he went to go talk to the king.
Of course he did.
And then he was like, yo, king. And the king was like, what? And then he was like, I need some more time.
Which I think is funny because wasn't that literally what, like, the original guys had asked for?
Yeah, they asked for more time. And he's like, no, I'm going to chop you. I'm going to chop prophets into pieces.
I don't know that song.
This is my last prophecy.
I think you really muffed that.
I really did. I actually had it. I was thinking about how to make that into that song earlier today on my way to work. And I had it down then. But when then I forgot that I was wanting to do that as a bit, and then I was like, but I gotta get it in there, so I just fucked it up and did it anyway, and then it turned into like really something stupid. So
yep, yeah, sure did.
That's what just happened there,
and that's why husband doesn't sing.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So anyway, he slept on it. Daniel got to leave, go to his house, hang out, and pray and talk to God, apparently.
And he asked his buddies to pray with him.
Yeah. And God apparently, showed him exactly what the dream was and how to interpret it. And he came back and told him, and he was like, cool. That's cool.
That was a lot of pronouns.
And then he Nebuchadnezzar. Sorry. Nebuchadnezzar prostrated himself before Daniel. And
which is really weird.
It is.
Yeah.
There was way too much just
trying. It was trying too hard.
It was giving too much credit to God for this guy Nebuchadnezzar who worships other gods and is a king who is destroying other lands and taking them over.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a fuck about this God. He just destroyed all this God's people and quite possibly if you were to interpret what he had done, he destroyed that God.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
So it wasn't believable.
No.
The way that the reaction happened.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, that was the gist of it.
That was the gist of it.
I feel like I have to do longer introductions now because of the way these stories go. But it's kind of fun.
Sure.
And occasionally I get to try to sing a song, which is really crappy.
Don't do it.
I'm not going to do it. Okay. I might do it, but I'm going to do it badly. I can promise you that.
Yes.
So anyway, that was Daniel chapter 2.
Sure as fuck was.
Which means that today we're getting into
Daniel chapter 3.
All right, let's do this.
Okie dokie. All right, we are jumping into Big D, chapter 3.
Oh, okay. That's Daniel.
It is.
The Daniel chapters.
Yeah.
The book of Daniel.
But I want to call him Big D.
I know.
That's just so much more fun.
Right.
Or Danny Boy, as somebody in our Discord server pointed out.
Which we're doing today. Yeah, we're live. We're doing live.
And you should join us every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern.
It might change to Wednesdays soon.
It might,
Coming in August, I believe. We're going to be switching the days up.
You should join us every week on whatever day it happens at that week that you want to do it.
Yes, yes.
So we are entering chapter 3 of Daniel. And just want to preface this with a note before we start actually reading that this book is divided into 2 parts. Chapters 1 through 6 are a set of 6 court tales. So that's where we are right now.
Right.
And then chapters 7 through 12 are 4 apocalyptic visions. Yeah.
Can't wait.
And then there's like 3 extra stories that we're going to read at that point as well.
Right. Yeah.
That were in some of the early translations that didn't quite make it into the stapled collection.
Yeah.
So
they call it the Apocrypha?
Apocrypha because they're apocalypse stories.
Sure.
Or whatever.
I guess.
So something in particular about this chapter that we're reading is Daniel's absence.
Oh.
It's the only one in this book, in the book of Daniel, that he's not in, but his friends are.
That's really odd because we just ended with him doing something pretty significant.
Right.
So it's odd that this is the chapter where he'd be missing.
Well, these stories aren't necessarily consecutive.
Right.
Like, the first chapter was the intro explaining how he got there and what happened, and that was thought to be added later.
Yeah.
Right? So the one that we just read was actually just the first story. So this is just another story.
Okay.
And it happens to be about his friends.
So is this like the Scooby Gang or something of the Bible?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say, yeah, I agree to that. I agree to those terms.
Got it.
The fact that Daniel is absent from this one does suggest that this story may have been independent from the others. Because remember, they were all kind of floating around at the same time.
Right.
And some of them like came together and they were like, look at these 2 or 3 stories. I'm going to staple them together because they're all about this dude.
Sure.
Let's call this dude Daniel. Yeah, that's cool. And then this other one came in and they were like, whoa, what's that? This doesn't, it tastes the same, but it doesn't have dude in it. I don't know what to do with it, but it's really good apparently. So they were like, just change the name of the friends to match the Daniel's friends and then just staple it in there somewhere.
Got it.
So that's my rendition of history.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
All right.
I think that's as good as any.
Sure.
With regard to knowing how the Bible was done and put together and thought out. So
I should be a history teacher.
Totally. Yeah.
Don't you think?
Biblical history, even.
Okay.
I guess technically we kind of are.
Don't you think?
In a way.
For fuck's sake, shut up. Don't you think if I was a teacher that the way I describe stories I would entertain students and they would probably be more inclined to remember stories better from history?
Possibly. Yeah.
I think so. Because I try to like make it funny.
You do.
Yeah.
I think I would learn better if you've seen I've showed you them multiple times, but they have these versions of history where they teach it by doing like social media replies or text message replies.
Oh, I love those.
I think those are fantastic. Like, there's like the one that's like the U.S. has entered the chat for World War II or whatever. Like it's just
I love
there's
those.
The way they make it all flow through those chats is fantastic.
Yeah, those are really funny.
If you haven't seen like the text message thread history things, you should do a search and try to find them.
Well, you should find one and link it.
I should. Yeah, I will try to remember to do that. So and we'll try to link that in the show notes because that's one of my favorite things.
What I like is the drunk history.
Drunk history is fun. Yes,
those are really fun.
So speaking of history, you know I am a history buff.
I do know this.
Like when I was younger, well, even in my mid-20s and probably early 30s, I spent a lot of time falling asleep to like history shows.
You
like
did.
that was just how I spent my life.
Although when we got together, you were falling asleep to Boston Legal.
Boston Legal, yeah, that was my favorite show.
Oh, and
It was a great show. It was a great show.
I made you turn that music off, though.
Boston Legal was so fantastic.
I know, but you would fall asleep, and the DVD would just go to the screen.
I back then I needed noise, and now I don't. I've learned to live without it. But I didn't. Back then I did. I needed
learned
noise.
to live without your noise. What?
I don't even know what you're singing.
It's from Jar of Hearts. Only you're a jar of noise.
I don't even know what Jar of Hearts is.
Okay, I'm not singing that one.
Okay.
That's too pretty.
Got
I
it.
refuse to ruin it with my poison.
But like, who sings it?
What's her name?
I don't know.
Okay, she's really pretty and it's a good song, and fuck off because I can't remember her name on the spot.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Was it like what decade was it?
I don't know, within like the last 10 to 15 years. She also sang a song Only Human, I think.
Okay.
Or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know
See,
that.
Jar of Hearts is fantastic.
Yeah. I was looking for an answer, not a
I know.
not a comment thread.
Do not engage in the chat. God damn it. All right. So are we going to read this shit now? This Daniel list.
Did I stop you or something?
No. I stopped me.
Okay.
Let's get into this Daniel sans Daniel.
Did we not even start the chapter yet?
No, we didn't. No, we did not.
Interesting.
King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold. Because remember, he was like, "You're so awesome because you interpreted my dreams. I'm going to make a fucking statue."
Yeah, because that's what I do when people interpret my dreams. I make gold statues.
Exactly. So he made an image of gold, 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide.
That sounds like a giant dick.
Weird. It's definitely not humanoid.
Right. Yeah.
And then he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon, because that's where they were.
Yeah.
He then summoned the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials to come to the dedication of the image he had set up.
Yeah.
So the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, and magistrates, and all the other provincial officials
Maybe it was a Nephilim dildo.
assembled for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before it. I'm ignoring that because no, it wasn't.
60 feet. I was just trying to think of the size of this thing.
Not feet, cubits.
Well, yeah, but okay, a foot and a half, whatever the fuck a cubit is.
Cuba.
I'm gonna call it a cubert. I like Cubert. It was a good game.
Kubi doo.
But like,
where are you?
That's a big fucking golden dildo. That's what it is for a Nephilim. That's what I'm thinking. That's what it's got to be.
Okay.
Or maybe their god. Maybe their god needed the dildo. I don't know. But it's a giant golden dildo. That's what it is.
There are suggestions that perhaps it was merely a pillar, or that it was an animal, or it might have been
a 60-foot fucking 6 foot wide animal.
I don't know. I'm just telling you the notes that I read about it.
Yeah.
It might have been a pillar with animals and gods carved into it all around. That would make better sense.
So decorative dildo.
Right.
Yeah.
Part of it might have not been all dedicated to the statue. Part of it might have been the platform that it was upon.
Okay.
Because they're like, that's ridiculous, the difference in the height versus the width.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So there are questions.
It seems very phallic and symbolism. It's very tall and
not wide. So it's it's a thin dick motherfucker.
Yeah.
Okay.
But long, really long. I'm just saying.
Oh my God, I can't with you. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, "Nations and peoples of every language," because he's loud.
Yeah, because that's what heralds do. They hark.
Hark. This is what you are commanded to do.
Okay.
As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music. So as soon as you hear all that shit, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Uh-oh, I see a problem, right?
Yeah, because we shouldn't worship gold. According to the other god.
It's an idol. He wants them to pray to an idol.
Right, yeah.
Whoever does not fall down and worship, this is still the herald yelling, will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. Let it be so.
So immediate hell then.
This is the way.
Yeah.
This is what he said. Therefore, as soon as they heard the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and all kinds of music, all the nations and peoples of every language fell down and worshipped the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. All of them? I'm going to bet not.
Well, I mean, he did conquer a lot of lands, so
I'm saying
quite a few.
I bet there's a few that didn't.
Like Egypt?
Like maybe
because they never conquered them.
How about the main characters of the story?
Right. Oh, right, yeah. Because they're godly and they,
They just literally interpreted a dream or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm going to guess that they did not.
Right.
At this time, some astrologers, so Chaldeans, came forward and denounced the Jews. They're like, look at them three turdlets over there.
Okay.
They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, may the king live forever.
Right.
Your Majesty has issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music must fall down and worship the image of gold, and that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into a blazing furnace. But guess what?
What?
There are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon.
Okay.
Do you know who they are?
They're the 4 kids that took over the duties.
No, remember, Daniel's not in this story.
Okay, the 3 kids that are not Daniel that took over the duties of whatever once they...
You said duty. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I said that wrong, who pay no attention to you, your majesty. I mean, what tattletales. What little bitches, right?
Right.
Why are you going to get other people in trouble?
Well, because... I don't know.
They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold that you have set up. Like, ugh.
Okay.
How about mind your beeswax?
Well, I mean, a lot of people do those things to get ahead, right?
I know.
Like if you want that position,
assholes.
you would make them look bad.
Because they're assholes.
Sure.
Like, I wouldn't rat. Would you rat somebody out?
I'm
that did you no harm and is just over there doing their own thing?
I generally no. I don't think so.
I wouldn't.
But I can't speak for what's going on in this situation exactly.
Right.
Okay.
Well, furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men, not boys, were brought before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold that I have set up? I'm like... You know the answer.
Right. You literally just got an answer about your fucking dream from their God.
Yeah. And you talked about how awesome their God is.
Right.
So
you fell down and prostrate because so if we're taking this in chronological order, you already very much know about their God.
Yeah.
And even hypothetically respect it.
So if I were those boys or dudes, I'd be like, why are you clowning, King?
Right.
Don't clown on me, bro. You know.
Right.
Now, when you hear the sound of the horn, continued the king, the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all other kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you motherfuckers will be thrown immediately into a goddamn blazing furnace. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then, what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?
I don't know. I bet we find out, though.
I bet that it's Yahweh, dude.
Yeah.
And
he's going to do something to fix this.
Yeah. I'm just like, why you trying God? Really? That's what you want to do when you were just showed?
Oh, you're talking about Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Why you challenging him?
Well, I question the validity of that thing happening in the first place because it didn't seem correct or right.
No.
Which apparently it was not correct or right.
Right, exactly.
This wouldn't be happening if it was.
Exactly. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, all 3 in unison at once. 1, 2, 3, go.
Yeah.
King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. Yeah, they all spoke this simultaneously. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. I'm reading as though I'm AI.
Oh, okay.
Because that's the only way all 3 could be talking at the same time without a fucking script. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Okay, so they're like basically saying, we're not going to worship your God. We're going to pray to our God. Our God may or may not answer us, but that's not the important part.
Sure.
We may die, and that's fine. We're fine with that.
That's our God's bidding, and we'll gladly do that as opposed to bend our knee to you and your golden dildo. Because
unlike Nikki Haley, we will not bend the ring. We will stand by our values.
Kiss the ring?
Did I say bend the ring?
You did, yeah.
I meant bend the knee.
I know.
Or kiss the ring.
Right.
But I combined them because that's how I do. Yeah, I'm like that. Okay, so anyways, then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude toward them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual.
7 times, though.
7 times.
We like that 7 number in the Bible. Okay.
And commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. I wish he'd quit saying their names over and over again so that I have to keep repeating how bad I say them.
Yeah.
It's really embarrassing, honestly. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace.
Oh, man. Okay.
They're on fire.
Apparently.
These boys are on fire. The king's command was so urgent and the furnace so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Whoa.
And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace.
Okay.
Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, "Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?"
Didn't you just... Okay.
Were you not watching,
right?
My guy?
Yeah. I think if there was people being thrown into a fire near me, I would probably notice that happening.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't need to ask other people.
Well, did those guys just fall into the fire where you actually threw them?
Right.
They replied, "Certainly, Your Majesty." He said, "Wait, but look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire."
What?
So they threw in 3, but dude's looking in and he sees 4.
Okay.
Unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods.
Okay.
Did you hear it? I sing it so that you would feel the import.
Yeah.
Son of the gods, plural.
This is going... Oh, plural god. Okay.
And son of.
Right.
Yeah. But...
So also could be interpreted as Jesus, probably.
That is what happens, yes.
Okay.
That is what gets done by Christians who have to steal other people's religion.
But also interesting, as you said, that it is plural.
But see, Nebuchadnezzar is not saying that their God doesn't exist.
Right.
He's merely saying, but this is the one I do.
Got it.
And I want you to do it too.
Yeah.
You do my God with me.
Right.
And they're like, no, we'll do our God. And he's like, fuck your God, do my God. And they're like, still no, though.
Got it.
He's like, get in the fire with ya.
Okay.
Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace, which I doubt because his servants died just standing near it because it was so fucking hot. So do you really think the king walked up to it?
No.
I don't. Anyway, he opened it and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God." Ooh, damn. "Come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire. Okay. And the satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their fucking bodies, nor was a hair of their head singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them.
Interesting.
This is a true or false? I'm going with false.
Yeah, definitely
right?
false.
False.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm assuming it's true or false.
Well, no, this is in line with what we've been listening to so far with this book of Daniel, and they're
cute
try,
little legends,
right? They're trying very hard to make God seem very powerful and important, and it's like they're trying to work extra hard to make this God be working towards something in the future. Like it's a very forward thinking God that they're talking about now that's got plans for these people, that's got great ambition to make things happen the way he wants them to happen.
Right.
And that can't be stopped by silly little things like death and other gods and other powerful people, whatever. But they go to great lengths to make Nebuchadnezzar end up ultimately bowing before this god over and over again so far. Right. So it's really weird and unnecessary in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because it's too much after
is.
what we read thus far in the Bible.
Right. Yeah. Because Nebuchadnezzar doesn't end up respecting his God.
Why would that fucking happen? That doesn't make any sense.
Right. So then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own capital G God."
Since I'm going to ask, since he doesn't need this other god as much, because this is the best god now, right? Can I have some of that gold dildo?
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying, just a little chunk.
There were also suggestions that perhaps it was merely gold plated.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know, because having a bill, like if it was solid gold, that would have been more gold given the measurements. That would have been more gold than the entire nation
of the nations.
Yeah. Babylon would not have been able to afford that.
Got it. But even back with gold plating back then, it wasn't going to be something that was like really thin, so it would be something that would still have a lot of worth to it. So if you ask me, I'm going to still take a lot of the I'm still going to chip off a piece because I mean it's still got enough to make you rich, I would imagine.
I would imagine as well. Yeah. I mean, I'll take even the littlest bit.
Right.
Therefore, continued Dude.
Okay.
I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the capital G God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces. This is their last resort. There it is. And their houses be turned into piles of fucking rubble. For no other God can save in this way.
Wow. This is you just built I mean, let's just call it 60 feet because
you can't with the cubits.
Fuck cubits, whatever.
Right.
But let's just call it 60 feet. You just built a 60-foot tall, 6-foot wide golden rod, essentially.
Sure.
And you just instantly are now all on board with this other god and telling everybody that this is the best god.
Well, I mean, this was like right before his eyes. I
get it.
In canon, according to the story,
yeah.
This was right before his eyes.
All right.
Like everything else could be like, maybe God did it, maybe my God didn't. I don't fucking know. But
this is the kind of shit though that people like that I talk to online. They're like, see how God proved his might and his worth. I'm like, This is a stupid, silly story.
Well, here's the thing. People that use the Bible to prove the Bible are the same people that would use the root word of the word they're looking up in the dictionary in the definition. So, like, you would say, what is sadness? Look it up in the dictionary. And they look up sadness and they say, oh, it's when a person is sad. And it's like, false. Like, you can't use the word in the definition of the word you're looking up.
Right.
That is such asinine bullshittery.
Right.
So, no, you can't use the Bible to prove the Bible. I already don't believe in it. Therefore, your proof is not proof.
Right.
Ugh. Okay.
But
anyway.
it works for them because they believe wholeheartedly that this is actually the Word of God until you then prove that is not correct by showing how many fucking contradictions there are, and they're like, well, you can't take it literally.
Except that
and I'm
they're like,
holy fucking hell.
Except then they're like, no, I take it all literally. And it's like, only sometimes, only when it's convenient.
There's literally no winning an argument with somebody who is hell-bent on okay, to be fair, there's no winning an argument with me about God existing either.
Well, the thing is,
so I mean, I'm not trying to say that they have something different from what I have, but they are the ones with the burden of proof because they're claiming something does exist.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just,
and it
bothers me.
It's not about winning an argument versus losing an argument. I'm not trying to win. So you're right. There is no winning an argument with them, but I don't want to win the argument. What I want is for us to reach a point of agreement on something, anything.
And I want you to stop changing the fucking rules halfway through the game.
Yeah, don't move the goddamn goalpost.
Yeah, can we have just like a reasonable discussion about this and try to come to some sort of a consensus on what we agree on and disagree on, instead of just constantly moving this argument around to different topics that have no relation to each other, to try to just keep not having to deal with the last conversation.
But honestly, if you're starting from a place where you actually believe in talking donkeys, get the fuck out of here. Like, I can't. I don't have the patience for it.
I agree, but there's not. If you say that, right? Like, if there's somebody that's arguing with me online about God and the existence of God, they are not going to. If I say, well, what about talking donkeys? They're not going to be like, well, you're right, or they're going to say that they're going to pick one or the other, and then when we get into it on that. And then they can't go any further with it. They just drop it and move to the next argument. And I'm like, okay, I can't keep following you around. Like, we could do this for the next year, man. Like, the book is big. The Bible is a big fucking book.
It's a form of sea lioning, though. And that's where they toss like 1,000 different arguments at you.
Yeah.
And you're busy chasing down each one to prove them wrong. And you'll never get there.
No, I called somebody out on it actually just today, because they sent it's like a 20 chapter book as a link to something that they wanted me to comment on. And I'm like, what?
I'm not reading that.
Fuck off. And he was trying to tell me that I was wrong about the Dead Sea Scrolls times. I looked it up. I said, well, it was somewhere between like 200 BCE and this time frame, because I was talking about how there are places in the Old Testament that have been added to, written, out of time. So like, the book we're in now with Daniel was written about 400 years past when the Babylonian exile actually happened, which is what we're talking about, right? And he's like, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. And the Dead Sea Scrolls prove this. And I'm like, okay, but the things I'm talking about were all done prior to this.
Right.
I'm not talking about the New Testament, which also, that doesn't work for that either, because of when the New Testament was written.
Right.
So either way you go with this, yes, it's a nice basis for people to understand an early text of the Bible, but you can't use that as proof that nothing was ever altered in the Bible either.
Right.
It's one of those things, like they pick these little points and they're like, this is the reason all of this is correct. And I'm like, no, that's not correct.
The printing press really caused problems because it made it like solid and written in stone. It'll never be changed ever. And it's like, you're cute. I don't think you know how things work. Like, I don't know how things work, but I at least acknowledge that. And I think I know more how things work than you do.
Right.
So, okay, we're almost done with this chapter.
Sorry, I know I went off on a
No, that is okay.
Here, so.
That is okay. So no other god can save in this way, right?
Got it, yeah.
Okay. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So put them into power, which I thought they already were, but whatever.
Yeah, they were until somebody else was like, they're assholes. And he's
put
like,
them in the fire.
Yeah, they're assholes. And then he saw a miracle happen. And he's like, they're not assholes.
Right.
Okay. Whatever, man.
Yep. So that's the end.
That is the end. That was Daniel chapter 3.
Sure as fuck was.
Which means that we'll be back tomorrow with
Big D, chapter 4.
Daniel chapter 4. We'll see you then.
Bye. Husband.
Wife.
Hello.
Hi, we're back.
Hi, welcome back.
Yeah, we had a bit of a meltdown on our computer.
It took a crap.
And then we had to order parts and it took forever. And now we're back.
A week later. And you know what we're going to do?
We're going to continue where we left off?
Well, yes, but we're going to pretend that episodes, well, I don't know the episode number, but Daniel chapters 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
That those just now we're Monday, Tuesday,
and we're
Wednesday.
we're just picking back up. Yeah, right.
And
So then, like, this is Thursday last week.
Yep.
Instead of Thursday this week?
No, those were this week.
Oh, okay.
We never took a week off. So since we just read Daniel chapter 3 yesterday, do you remember what happened and where the hell we are?
Well, I remember there was a golden dildo. Giant golden dildo.
I don't recall that.
Yeah, there was a giant statue. The Nebuchadnezzar made the giant golden statue.
Yeah, and they wouldn't bow to it.
Yeah, exactly. And then the three guys, the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Why can't we just say Daniel's homies?
Yeah, those guys. Mm-hmm. They got thrown into a fire by Nebuchadnezzar, and they lived because God.
No,
I guess?
because when Nebuchadnezzar looked into the furnace door window or something, A, he didn't get burned up even though his guards did,
right?
And B, he saw the like shadowy golden image of fourth guy, which is God ?
Sure, or angel of the Lord, whatever they want to call it. And but then because we just got done reading prior to that how Nebuchadnezzar was like saying how this God was all powerful because Daniel was able to interpret his dream and know his dream. So that happened the chapter prior to this last one, and then in this one he's throwing people in the fire because they worship this other god, and then
they wouldn't bow
to his god, right,
to his precious little dildo statue,
right. And so when that happened and he saw that they lived and some god or angel or whatever saved them, he then said that this God was the most powerful God again.
Yep.
Again.
He relearned his lesson.
So
he's like, oh yeah, I forgot.
The amount of times that he's learned that this God is the most powerful God kind of detracts from the idea that he's learned that this God is the most powerful God.
Right. Yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
I mean, he is Babylonian. You know about those Babylonians. He certainly was no Chaldean. He comes from his mom's side of the family,
Yeah. So that was the gist of Daniel chapter 3.
It sure as fuck was.
And we're really happy to be back on our regular schedule that never
deviated.
Right, yeah. Just go with that.
Yep.
And so today we're going to be reading
Daniel chapter 4.
All right, let's do this.
Okie dokie. All right, we are hopping into Big D or Danny Boy.
Or Daniel.
Yes. Chapter 4.
Yes.
And before we start, I wanted to say a couple things. First, a reminder, since I know we just read this yesterday, but, just a refresher. This book is divided into 2 parts. We are in the first part, which is comprising chapters 1 through 6.
Okay.
And that is a set of 6 court tales. So it's like Daniel's time at court, except for chapter 3, where he didn't show up at all.
Right.
And then the second part is chapters 7 through 12, which are for apocalyptic visions.
Right.
And speaking of apocalyptic, that gets me into, I need to clarify something because I used the word apocryphal and apocalyptic in confusing ways. And I don't think I totally knew what the fuck I was talking about.
In the last episode.
In one of the previous episodes.
Right.
Yeah. So, an apocryphal story is one that is considered like secret or missing, or it's one that's been kept out of the Bible.
Canon. Right.
Yeah, out of the canon specifically. Or that would be in general, but with regard to the Bible, it's been left out of the Bible.
Right.
So there are some stories that belong in the book of Daniel that are apocryphal in that they're left out.
Right.
Okay. Now, having said that, the book of Daniel is considered an apocalyptic tale because it has those apocalyptic visions.
Right.
So, and there are other books of the Bible, like the book of Revelation is one that we happen to know is an apocalyptic story. I mean, just kind of gleaned that from, what we know of the book of Revelation.
Yes.
Yeah. So, the story of Daniel, the book of Daniel, is an apocalyptic vision. There are tales that were left out of this apocalyptic vision, therefore they are apocryphal. So one might say that those 3 stories that were left out are both apocryphal and apocalyptic.
Okay. Well, are they though? Like, do you know that those stories are apocalyptic? Or?
They're part of the apocalyptic book. I don't know if those stories in and of themselves are apocalyptic visions.
Okay.
So that is a good point. I don't know whether they'd fall into the court tales or the visions.
Right, and that's what I was just curious about, because I don't know anything about those extra books of Daniel. So
me neither. I don't even know if Daniel's in them.
Right,
you know?
Right.
So just wanted to clarify that there is a difference between apocryphal and apocalyptic, and that I may or may not have used them interchangeably, and never listened to me. So there's that. All right, so...
But no, listen to us all the time.
Right.
Every day, all the time.
Except
for when we take a week off, which we don't and didn't and still haven't.
When I say don't listen to me, I just mean don't trust me. Always listen to our podcast. Never trust a goddamn thing we say. I mean, basically.
Well, I think, look, we endeavor to find the right information, and we always try to come back with the correct information. And I think that because we're going through this for our first time, and we're trying to figure this out kind of on the fly, right? We're not doing a lot of research up front. Right. I do very mild research, and I don't always catch the full meaning or impact of certain words. And this has been from the very get-go meant to be a very first take glance at the Bible from the perspective of us who are, it's our first time reading it. Right. And we're atheists, right?
And we ain't got no college between us. Just kidding.
That's not entirely true.
I know. But I'm just kidding. Yeah. We do have some college. I was just, saying we're like the everyman.
Sure.
That's all.
Okay.
So this chapter, Daniel chapter 4, gets into Nebuchadnezzar's madness. Okay. And I have sent you a picture that is creepy AF that y'all should go take a look at this picture. Husband is going to put it in different places. I don't know where
I'm going to try. I can't really do it in the show notes, I don't think.
No, so I don't think you can post it in the show notes.
I'm not really sure where I'm putting it yet.
Okay. Well, I will talk about it again at the end of this and let you know what it's called and everything so that you can try to go find it.
Okay.
It's not hard. Actually, if you...
It's pretty easier to find a link to it, and then I'll try to put a link to a picture. That'd be the easiest way to do it.
I didn't even think of that. Like, if you go to Wikipedia and just type in Daniel 4, it's Daniel chapter 4 is what that is, and it comes up in that. Because it's a rendition of what Nebuchadnezzar might have looked like. So it's
I saw the picture. That's really creepy and weird.
Yes, isn't it though?
Why would he look like that?
I don't know. Let's find out.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw that when I was doing my notes, and I was like, why is he...
He's human, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's just a guy.
Yeah.
Dude.
It's very weird.
Who builds 60-foot dildos.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Golden ones.
I mean, this picture is not cool. He does not look okay in that image.
No, he doesn't.
All right, so let's read this.
Okay.
King Nebuchadnezzar, to the nations and peoples of every language who live in all the earth. And this is a letter, by the way.
Oh, okay.
I forgot to say
from
that.
From Nebuchadnezzar? Or who's the letter from? What?
This chapter is presented in the form of a letter from King Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Sorry. May you prosper greatly. It is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed for me. So something has happened to Nebuchadnezzar, and he's like, y'all, hang on, wait.
Suddenly he's a believer.
Yeah. Yeah, like
the monkeys or whatever.
Like the monkeys.
Isn't it? I'm a believer. Isn't that the monkeys?
No. You're thinking of the song in Shrek, right? I'm a believer.
Yeah.
That is not the monkeys.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure what song you're thinking of by the monkeys. Hey,
no, that's I don't know.
Say we monkey around.
I don't know.
I don't either. Okay. Anyways. How great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an eternal kingdom. His dominion endures from generation to generation. Okay, so he is like...
Then he's all in.
Yeah.
He's like, damn.
He's committed. He's like, y'all, just wait till I tell you.
The dream thing, you know, that was... but the living through the fire.
Yeah.
That did it.
Yeah, the walk in the fire.
Yeah.
You know?
He's writing a letter.
He's writing a letter to all his buddies.
Yeah.
And I mean, who does a king hang out with but other kings and high officials?
Right. And you would think that if he thought this, that he would maybe let them... The Israelites go?
You would think.
If he really thought this
like,
God was like this badass, right?
I didn't know. Here,
right.
you can have your shit back. I don't want that guy after me.
I'm not going to fuck with you.
Right?
You know?
Ooh. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at home in my palace, contented and prosperous. You know, I was just hanging around as I do, like whatever, all innocent and kingly.
Sure.
I had a dream that made me afraid. As I was lying in bed, the images and visions that passed through my mind terrified me.
Mm-hmm.
So I commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be brought before me to interpret the dream for me. So he's recapping what happened.
Yeah.
When the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners came, I told them the dream, but they could not interpret it for me, and that is not what happened.
Right. He told them that they had to know what the dream was.
Yeah. He did not tell them his dream. He told them he had a dream.
Right.
Tell me what my dream is and tell me what the fuck it means.
Yeah.
So already...
it's not correct.
It's not correct.
Yeah.
Y'all wrote that shit wrong. Finally, Daniel came into my presence, you know, because I made him.
Yeah.
And I told him the dream.
That's not entirely true either. When Daniel came into his presence, it was because Daniel requested to see him.
Oh, yeah. But listen to this. I told him the dream. No, but you didn't, though.
Right.
Oh, my God. Unless this is a different dream. But I can't imagine that it would be.
That doesn't make any sense.
He is called Belteshazzar, you know, because
so he's admitting that this God is the all-powerful, all-seeing, knowing God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet he's not referring to Daniel by his given name from his Hebrew name.
Yeah.
He's referring to them by the name that he gave him.
Yeah.
Which sounds like he doesn't really respect this God in that statement.
I don't know. Listen to this.
Okay.
He is called Belteshazzar after the name of my God, and the spirit of the holy gods is in him. So he's basically like, this is his way of showing respect, even though it is disrespectful.
Right.
So does he disrespect? I don't know.
Got it.
Okay. I said, Belteshazzar, Big D, chief of the magicians, I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and no mystery is too difficult for you. Here is my dream. Interpret it for me.
Okay.
These are the visions I saw while lying in bed. I looked, and there before me stood a tree in the middle of the land. Its height was enormous, you know, as a tree does.
Sure.
The tree grew large and strong, and its top touched the sky, as trees do.
What constitutes touching the sky? Wouldn't anything off of the ground kind of be the sky? It's a matter of perspective, right? Mm-hmm. If you're an ant, the sky is just right there, like at our ankle. But if you're a human, obviously it's a little bit higher.
It's kind of like where does sky end and space begin?
Right. Yeah. It's all about how you perceive it. So,
and if you live in the mountains, are you in the sky? No, you're still on Earth. But I don't know. I feel like you might. be in the sky.
I hiked in the mountains once,
and there's clouds up there.
I was above the clouds.
See?
So, I mean, I guess maybe I touched the sky.
Okay. And what about an airplane? If it's hovering, it's not on the ground, but it's hovering above the ground. Is it in the sky? It's not on Earth.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, right?
Right.
That's one of those questions that keep you up at night kind of things.
Not me.
No, but it's like shower thoughts. All right. Velociraptor, Velociraptor.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, the tree touched the sky or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It was visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful, its fruit abundant, and on it was food for all. Under it was the wild... Oh, I messed that up. Let me try reading that again.
Right.
Under it, the wild animals found shelter, and the birds lived in its branches. From it, every creature was fed.
Is this the same dream? Because I remember like a statue that was made of a bunch of different materials.
This must be a different dream.
I guess.
So, okay, maybe he did tell him his dream.
Sure.
It's
this
weird.
is really this whole book so far has been very disjointed with regard to the stories and how they kind of
don't connect.
Right. Yeah.
They're like chapter one story in and of itself.
They're kind of well told stories, but they're not together.
Right. They don't have transitions. And an editor would send it back and say, you need to write transitional scenes.
Even the fact, like, it's not so much that it doesn't have transitions, it doesn't have any continuity. Like, there's no like, this story doesn't relate to the other dream story that we learned about, which I would have assumed it would have been about.
Yeah.
The last story doesn't acknowledge the fact that he already acknowledged that God is the most God of high. And here he's writing a letter about God being the most biggest God, best God. But it's not about either of the other times that he acknowledged that.
It's an entirely different dream.
This is all kind of fucked up. Like, as far as, this is really weird.
Yeah. I don't know. It is interesting.
Yeah.
In the visions I saw while lying in bed, I looked, and there before me was a holy one, a messenger coming down from heaven. He called in a loud voice, "Cut down the tree and trim off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it and the birds from its branches. But let the stump and its roots, bound with iron and bronze, remain in the ground, in the grass of the field.
Okay.
Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven." This is still the guy talking. Okay.
Yeah.
"And let him live with the animals among the plants of the earth. Let his mind," I got to tell you, I got to interrupt myself here. If this happened in my dream, I could not wake up and tell you this whole speech, blah, 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 blah. I'd be like, I don't know. He said something like, cut that shit down and I don't know, feed the animals with the fruit.
I'm not going to, so I'm going to say this. I had a friend that I remember from high school that was able to, like, in detail recount his dreams that he had, like, from the previous night.
Okay.
And he would tell us the whole thing.
Oh, no. I don't have a problem with him remembering everything that happened.
Okay.
I am having a problem with the whole, and then he said a speech, and I'm going to recount for you the speech that he said.
Right.
And it's like a word for word thing.
Got it.
Like, that's what I mean. I would not be able to deliver that speech to you.
Got it. Okay.
I would have to summarize it in my special way.
I think we're supposed to assume that this is, imprinted from God, right?
Seared into his brain.
Yeah.
All right. In gold, sparkling letters. All right. Let him live with the animals among the plants of the earth. Let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let him be given the mind of an animal till 7 times pass by for him.
7.
Yeah. Always okay. 7.
Right.
That would be why he looks weird as fuck in that picture.
Got it.
Yeah. The decision is announced by messengers. The holy ones declare the verdict so that the living may know that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes and sets over them the lowliest of people.
Okay.
This is the dream that I, King Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now, Belteshazzar, tell me what it means, for none of the wise men in my kingdom can interpret it for me. But you can, because the spirit of the holy gods is in you. I got that in me, all right.
Again, they had their own gods in Babylon, and none of this tracks. This just does not sit well with me as something that could have even, remotely happened.
I'm going to push back on that just a little bit, in that they might, many of them might have looked on the gods as personal. And so, our God, my God, is different from y'all's God and your personal God. So they recognized that each of them had different gods. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess.
It wasn't until, what are they called? The Hebrews took over and were like, no, there's only one though. And then later on, and then the Christians were like, yeah, totally. There's only fucking one. There's only one, goddammit, ever. There never was any other.
Sure.
So prior to that, they recognized that, we have our God over here in this corner of the world. Y'all have yours. And then, you might pass somebody on the road
But I'm not even getting at that. I'm saying that the acclaim that he is giving to this God when he's got his own God that they worship seems excessive. It seems too much. It seems that he's giving too much credit to this God when he was. This is a guy who they are claiming was building 60-foot statues for his God, right, and doing sacrifices and doing all these different things, right, and all of a sudden we're supposed to believe that he is this he's just prostrating himself converted. And he's writing letters because he is so enamored with this other God that has proved itself to him. I just don't buy it. That's all.
Right.
He literally just conquered these people. And this just sounds like some propaganda bullshit is what it sounds like.
True. I mean...
Especially because it's so disjointed.
The winners did write the book, after all.
Yeah, right.
So...
Right.
All right. So then Daniel, also called Belteshazzar, was greatly perplexed for a time, and his thoughts terrified him. So the king said, Belteshazzar, do not let the dream or its meaning alarm you.
Okay.
I mean, if you were Daniel, wouldn't you be like... The hell you say? You don't know what it is.
Right.
You don't get to be like, don't be afraid.
Right. Yeah, you wouldn't be asking for my interpretation if you knew what it meant. So
yeah.
What the fuck, man?
Yeah. My lord, if only the dream applied to your enemies and its meaning to your adversaries. The tree you saw, which grew large and strong with its top touching the sky, visible to the whole earth, with beautiful, that one?
Yeah.
That one with beautiful leaves. I'm going to re-describe it to you, okay?
Right.
With beautiful leaves and abundant fruit, providing food for all, giving shelter to the wild animals, and having nesting places in its branches for the birds. Mm-hmm. You know that one?
Yes.
Okay. Your majesty.
Yes.
You are that tree, your majesty. I was having a hard time with majesty and tree.
Right.
Because he says, your majesty, you are that tree.
Got it.
So I would call him your magistry.
Yeah.
Because that's just fun.
Right.
Okay, sorry. You have become great and strong. Your greatness has grown until it reaches the sky. And your dominion extends to distant parts of the earth.
Okay.
I don't think he touches the sky.
Well, I mean, they're just saying he's great, right?
You so great.
Yeah.
You're a fucking tree, guy.
Yeah. We're talking about a fucking dream here, so whatever.
Look how you be so tree.
Yeah.
Your majesty saw a holy one, a messenger coming down from heaven and saying, and I'm going to tell you again what he said.
Yeah,
I'm going to describe your dream back to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump bound with iron and bronze in the grass of the field while its roots remain in the ground.
Hold on.
What?
Iron and bronze.
Yeah.
That was part of the original dream that we heard back in that earlier chapter. Okay. Remember, because they left the bits at the bottom that were, it was ceramic, or it was like clay and...
steel. It was clay and steel.
Or no, iron. Iron.
Was it iron?
Yeah, because we talked about how he used to hate iron, and then it started representing other things later on. But anyway, it sounds like maybe it's this is like an offshoot of the same story.
Yeah.
This is some other branch of it.
I mean, keep in mind, too, that these stories were picked up from various sources.
Yeah, no.
They were not just lying around already stapled
But that's what I'm trying to draw attention to, is that this is probably essentially the same story, just different versions of it that were out there.
Right. That's true. See, what they should have done is combine them so that it was one story.
Yeah.
Dude told me what it meant, and then so this is what we did.
I do find it really interesting that even in this modern age that there are so many blatant contradictions that are left in the Bible that they just don't correct because it's always been there.
Right.
Right? We know, scholars know that these things are not, it draws attention to the legitimacy or illegitimacy of the Bible. Right? And so why would we leave them in there? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Because these are words that were exchanged thousands of years ago.
But there's stories that somebody created thousands of years ago is what it is, and they wrote them down, and then the part that bothers me is that essentially a lot of this stuff is said to be the word of God or the directions from God or whatever. But when we're talking about two different things that are kind of the same thing but not matching in any way whatsoever, that really, really detracts from that message. So that's all.
No, I agree. You're right. Okay, so I'm still describing to you what happened in your dream. Okay.
Right.
Cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump bound with iron and bronze in the grass of the field, while its roots remain in the ground. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven. Doo-doo. Let him live with the wild animals until 7 times pass by for him.
7.
Yep. This is the interpretation, Your Majesty. Magistry, if you will. Mm-hmm. And this is the decree the Most High has issued against my lord the king. You will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals.
Oh, no, not that.
You will eat grass like the ox and be drenched with the dew of heaven. Please don't hit me.
Okay.
7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes.
I want to make one small note here, because we say things about it all the time, but we don't talk about it a lot anymore. But the number 7 has popped up so many times throughout the Bible, as well as 40. And there's a couple of, there's some numbers that just 12 is another one.
They just have, like numbers.
There's these certain numbers that just always pop into
That's why
the Old Testament.
people love patterns, and specific numbers made it easier to remember the stories verbally. And these were originally oral stories, a lot of them.
Yeah.
So there's that end. Now coming at it from the other end, where we are today, people love patterns, so they look at those numbers and try to ascribe meaning to it.
Right.
And that's where you get your numerologists and your angel numbers and shit like that.
Yeah. I just didn't want to keep making fun of it without saying something about it.
Yeah. So. It's 7 for me, dog. The command to leave the stump of the tree with its roots. Okay, so still Daniel telling the king that, he's going to go mad or whatever.
Sure.
Means that your kingdom will be restored to you when you acknowledge that heaven rules. Heaven rules, man!
Hence, he's writing this letter.
Yeah. Therefore, Your Majesty, be pleased to accept my advice. Renounce your sins by doing what is right, and your wickedness by being kind to the oppressed. It may be that then your prosperity will continue.
Okay.
All this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. Me, the letter writer.
Right.
Me. Yeah. I'm writing this.
Yes.
Okay. 12 months later, as the king, me, was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, I, the king, said, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty? Look at my shit. My shit is so big. Did you see how my dick was just hanging there, so huge?"
Okay. I'm not really. I'm not understanding what's going on here exactly.
He's being boastful.
Yeah, but that's not good with God.
Yeah,
right?
He's going to get in trouble.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, even as the words were on his lips, a voice came from heaven. "You're a fool. You're so fucking stupid. I specifically told you don't say that shit.
Right.
This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar." This is the voice from heaven.
Yeah, right. In his letter.
Yeah, his letter. "Your royal authority, boom, has been taken from you." It doesn't say boom, but I thought it would be fun.
Yeah, nice touch.
Yeah. You, King Nebuchadnezzar, will be driven away from the people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox.
Okay.
7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes.
We've talked about this before, too. This story sounds very similar to the whole Moses and Pharaoh story.
Yeah.
The 7 and the things and I think we talked about this during his first dream because there was some correlation between the Exodus story and this story. And it feels like these writings that are being done, which they were written, as I recall, like we talked about in the first chapter, they're written in the 2nd century BCE.
I think so.
I believe.
I'm shitty with numbers.
Whatever. They were written later than a lot of the other books that we've read so far. And I believe it was around 200 BCE. So I'm just going to go with something along those lines. Yeah. But it feels like there was this group of people, and I think we even talked about the group of people, but they're writing these books based on their studies of the Bible,
right,
to create new stories. They're like, hey, hey,
let's just reissue this one with new binding.
Right. Yeah, that was a great idea for a story. Let's just use that shit.
You know what people love? People who collect books. What they love is when you get a book and it has multiple different covers. People love that. By which I mean, readers fucking hate that shit. Don't do it.
Right.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Or like the movie tie-in cover. No, they want the original cover. Okay? So that's what they're doing here. They're just putting it in a new cover.
Well, but it's in a whole new book, though. Well, they're writing.
Okay. It's a new story, but whatever.
Right.
You know, new phone, who dis?
Right.
Kind of thing. But it's the same person at the other end of the line.
Sure.
Okay. Immediately, what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. Oh, we got to listen to it one more time. They're going to tell us what they told us what they said.
All right.
He was driven away from people and ate grass like the ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair grew like the feathers of an eagle and his nails like the claws of a bird. And that picture that we saw perfectly encompasses that.
That I'll link to in the show notes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
At the end of that time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes toward heaven, and my sanity was restored.
Okay.
At that time, I don't understand. Didn't you do a 7? You had to do a 7 before you looked up, right?
We're just going to assume that happened 7 times, you know. So
are we assuming this is a week and not like 7 years?
I'm assuming that this whole story is bullshit.
I mean, okay, yes, obviously it's bullshit, but like in canon,
right? They didn't really make that clear, so I really don't know.
It had to only be a week. It couldn't be 7 years.
Sure.
I mean, maybe, in canon,
I guess
the king couldn't have disappeared for 7 years.
Right, but also this book of Daniel so far has been very boisterous with regard to how it is, you know, pushing up God. Yeah, it's definitely inflating God's ego with all this. It's crazy. This whole thing is just crazy talk.
God, Goddy God, God, Goddy God, God, Goddy God, God, Goddy God.
Right.
Then I praised the Most High. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I honored and glorified him who lives forever. Mm-hmm. His dominion is an eternal dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. Although he does ignore his people a lot.
He does.
All the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. They're not even worms now. Damn, they're not even worms. He does as he pleases with the power of heaven and the peoples of the earth, you know, because he's a dick.
Right.
I recognize that your God is a dick.
Yes, I do recognize that as well.
No one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" I can.
And then we're doing that.
Yeah. So. What have you done? My goodness, you suck.
Right.
At the same time that my sanity was restored, my honor and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom.
Okay.
My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored to my throne and became even greater than before. Do you think he brushed his teeth first?
I don't know.
Combed his hair?
I don't know. I think this whole...
Changed his undies?
Just dumb.
I mean, he was just like... crawling around in the grass, right? Like a madman?
Yeah.
Like, do you think he cleaned up?
I have no idea.
Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify. I got out my thesaurus and did a bunch of good, positive things.
Yeah.
The King of Heaven. Because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. The end.
I want to know where they got their source material from. Because this was written 400 years after the Babylonian exile, right? So Nebuchadnezzar has been dead for 400 years. When they wrote this, probably.
Something like that.
Yeah, I'm almost certain that that's correct.
Okay.
So anyway, they wrote this, let's just say 300 to 400 years after Nebuchadnezzar is dead, right?
Okay.
And... what the fuck do we know about people 300 and 400 years? What do we know about people like our founding fathers?
We don't even know our great-grandparents usually.
We know enough to tell some like fun stories about them, right?
Right.
But that's because we have a lot of written history on them. Mm-hmm. And they're still vague characters to us that we don't really know that well.
Yeah.
And here we are in ancient times reading about Nebuchadnezzar and what he felt like with regard to this god.
Yeah.
How?
Some 300 or 400 years ago.
Where did you get your information? I want to know where you got this from.
Right.
Because it doesn't make this makes no fucking sense.
Unless it was filed in the historical fiction aisle. I mean, I'm just saying, historical fiction is a thing. And it's where you take a person or event that actually happened from history, which Nebuchadnezzar was a king.
Right.
And then you write a story around it and you apply words and thoughts and feelings to him. And then you can't call it historical, obviously, because it's fiction, but it has so much history in it that did happen. So you call it historical fiction. And that is what they did with this,
I believe. This whole story about Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon and God and Daniel and all his friends, I feel like this is a 300 to 400 years later feel-good insert into the biblical text so that everybody can feel better about their whole getting conquered thing that happened a while back, you know?
Right.
It just this feels like propaganda, like I said earlier. It's not it doesn't jive with all, like, none of these books, none of these chapters mesh well with each other.
Right.
And it just feels like straight up propaganda.
Well,
that's how I feel about it. They
needed to create these stories to resurrect a national pride.
Yeah.
What is going to be more exciting than a king who oppressed you, not just like dying, but like before he died, he actually turned around and praised our God.
Right, but that's that's the conversation I'd like to be having about the Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did this actually mean to these people? Why did they do these things in the context of history? What was going on at the time? Why do they write these obviously false stories about this king? And there are reasons, like you just said, probably that revolve around, you know, pride of their people and, you know, trying to bring back their nationality and getting everybody excited about their God again, right?
Right.
But we don't talk about it that way. We talk about it as a true Word of God type thing that happened.
Right. You want to be able to have like a literary analysis that also takes history and geography into account and the politics at the time and all of that.
I think that's how we should be talking about any 2,000-year-old mythological being.
No, I agree. Totally.
That has no proof of existence.
Well, that's what we're trying to do here, but we have to read it in order to be able to have that conversation.
Yeah, and I'm further away. Like, I was already really far away from believing in God before we ever started this Bible, right?
Yeah, but you were more just like, meh, whatever.
I was angry at what people did with the Bible and the words in the Bible, and because it was affecting our culture a lot, and now even more so, right?
Right.
But I didn't know to what extent it was just a bunch of crap. You know, like I didn't understand that. I thought maybe, like, I was ready to see how it like came together and made sense, right? And there are arguments to be made that you can take messages throughout the Bible and create this standard message, right? And especially if you bring the New Testament into the talk and all these different things, right? But so far, where we are and where we've come from, the messages are just not working for me at all.
They changed so much from the beginning to now.
Yeah.
And so many times over that I can understand how every single belief system thinks it's the right one.
Sure.
Because there's a place in the Bible that validates that.
Yeah. No, and people joke about it all the time, but, you know, the cherry-picked Bible or whatever. And it's very true. Like, if I've seen one thing as we've been reading through this whole thing, is that the Bible is that there are, you could take things to mean any number of things. You could take this Bible that we've read and you could turn it into whatever type of idea you wanted to make it into. There is no set interpretation. There are accepted interpretations by certain groups that have become the mainstream interpretations. But you and I have read through this and taken something completely different than somebody who is religious would take from it.
Obviously, because we don't have the background to give us preconceived notions.
But generally, they don't either. Well, I see what you're saying. We're atheists. We haven't grown up in the religion.
We're not just atheists. We grew up without religion.
Right, right. So
I have to clarify that because there are people who did grow up with religion and then who became Christian or became atheists.
Right.
And I just wanted to clarify that we do not have that background.
Honestly, with regard to people who care a lot about being atheists, that seems to be the majority of the people out there. The reason we claim the title of atheist is more because of the political bullshit surrounding Christianity in the United States than it is about our anger or I don't want to say it's just anger with regard to the atheists that are out there, but because it's not. But there is definitely some aspect of wanting to disassociate themselves from the God of the Bible specifically, because it was such a traumatic event that whole portion of their life was so traumatic with regard to how they were brought up, how they felt about this imaginary God, and what happened to them when they decided to not believe in it anymore. Right? There's a lot of we've heard a lot of really horrible stories from people, and generally, I think most people are happy to have figured this out, but it still leaves chunks of hurt and pain.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's different ways of approaching the same thing, and I just never expected to see this much difference in what we're reading versus what the idea of the message is that's out in the world.
Yeah, that's been an interesting thing too, I think.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. Like we know basic stories.
Yeah.
You know, the Noah's Ark and that kind of thing. And, Adam and Eve, but we did not know all the other ins and outs of various stories.
Yeah.
And that's been interesting.
Well, and Christians give you the elevator pitch, right?
Right.
Like it's not you get the quick version of what they believe Christianity is.
Yeah.
And it's always something beautiful and wonderful, and you just need to believe and you got to have faith, right? That's the general message that you get. And most of those people probably know way less about the Bible than we do.
I actually want to say something about that because we were talking to somebody who had deconverted from Christianity.
Yeah. And
they said something that I meant to comment on at the time because it was so profound, but it did stick in the back of my mind. So with regard to Christians always claiming that they've read the Bible, like you and I always say that what they have read has been pieces from various pages and various books and various chapters that are, daily devotionals, that kind of thing, or whatever their pastor tells them to read.
Right.
They're not a cohesive, like reading it all in order, right? And then I have said, I completely believe that they may have read the entire Bible, but not straight through, and that makes all the fucking difference.
Yeah.
Like they may have touched every word at one time.
Right.
Throughout their life.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because they're not reading the whole thing, so they don't know what the fuck they've read.
Sure.
But the conversation when we were having this with some of our friends in the Discord group that meets Tuesday nights at 10 Eastern.
Probably Wednesdays this month.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah,
yes,
your work schedule changed.
Right.
Yeah. Keep following us for updates on that.
Right.
But at any rate, we were having a discussion about this in our Discord group. And one of the people that had deconverted from Christianity said, we were brainwashed into believing that we had read the entire Bible. So
yeah, I remember that comment. Yeah.
Yeah. And she said when she left the church and started, actually trying to read the Bible for herself and then listening to our podcast and listening to us talk about it, was when she realized that she hadn't read nearly as much as she thought she had.
Right.
And I found that fascinating. I didn't know that was a facet of the church, that they do let people believe that they've read the whole Bible.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a lot like how, when you're in elementary school through high school, if you never go past that point with your education or choose to learn more on your own, your idea of what history is very generic and filled with holes, right? And it's only when you decide to learn more that it fills in some of those gaps, and you start getting a little appalled about what humanity's history is, and it takes getting beyond that surface level understanding of what it is,
right?
And generally, unless you are scholarly about anything that you want to be and that you're interested in, you're never going to get past that generic state of that text,
right?
You're always going to get that fluffy, wonderful version of it,
right?
And
you have to want to know more.
You have to want to know more.
And a lot of times people are just content to just lie with what they've gotten, and they're done. They don't need more.
I think that's a great response to any Christian that you're fighting with. I'm sad that you don't want to know more.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the absolute truth.
And that can be true of not just the Bible, but people that are like, I can't be expected to, remember people's pronouns and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Really? Because you could memorize all the pieces of a recipe and, learn new vegetables that you never heard of before.
Right.
And that's not a problem for you. But respecting people, like, I'm really sad that you're done taking in new information.
Yeah. Well, they'll respect them as long as it's something that they deem is correct and right, because they have no problem with names, which is still an identifying character of a human being and how they want to be identified. So.
Unless those names are not your Jennifer, Stacy, David, Chris.
Right, yeah. No, they would not accept a name that somebody tells them is their name if they deem that person is not of that gender.
That's not white. That's how they...
Right.
If it's something that is like not considered like white American, then they're like, oh, I can't possibly have to figure out these letters. What is this alphabet soup?
Yeah.
Or you're right. A name that is specifically gendered one way or the other, if the person is identifying as a gender other than what their name would indicate, they're not going to respect that.
Right.
So, they're just done. And
hypocrisy.
That's sad.
There's lots of hypocrisy.
There is hypocrisy, but it's also just they feel like they know everything there is to know, and their church has told them that.
Yeah.
And so they have allowed that to... It's almost like they can sit back in their lazy boys and sigh and go, thank goodness I don't have to try anymore with life or learn new stuff.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Not only do I get to like enjoy, just sit back and not try anymore. Like I get to be lazy, but I also get to be prideful and boastful about it.
I think judgmental is something that people really enjoy doing too. Being
definitely.
judgmental. Like if you see yourself as higher or better than another human being, that makes you feel good about yourself, right?
Somehow, yeah.
So the more you can be judgmental and degrade other people, some people that makes them lift themselves. That replaces their self-worth, their mental health. It helps them feel more powerful, more in control. There's a lot of things.
There's a lot of psychology.
There's a lot of psychology behind it. Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't want to go. I don't know all the ins and outs, and I'm kind of talking out of my ass here.
As we do.
I know that is part of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think we've talked this to death, though.
We have gone far afield, my friend.
Yes. So that was Daniel chapter 4.
Sure as fuck was.
Which means that finally, tomorrow, we'll be back.
Friday, we'll be reading Daniel chapter 5.
That's right. All right. We will see you guys then.
Bye. Husband.
Wife.
Do you know where we are and how the hell we got here?
Well, yesterday we read Daniel chapter 4. And in that chapter, Nebuchadnezzar was writing a letter.
He was writing a letter.
Yeah, and it was about a dream, and I would have assumed that it was about the last dream that we heard about, but it didn't quite sound the same.
Yeah.
So that made me question a lot of things about, like, what the fuck is happening, what's going on, what is this shit?
Very confusing.
It was. But ultimately, he was going to be a tree and an eagle, and he's going to get lost in the wilderness for 7 years, and there's like all kinds of stuff going on in the dream.
Gonna eat grass.
Right, yeah,
Like
he's
a
going to eat
goat.
grass. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, he's going to find his way back and then, bow before God and all's going to be good. And then he gets to be king again or something.
And then that happened and he was like, yo, you guys. And
Right.
he had to like share the good news.
But I'm a little skeptical about the validity of this account.
Oh,
So,
for sure.
just a bit.
Not only that it didn't happen, because obviously,
Right.
but the fact that he even a little bit felt this way and wrote this kind of stuff down.
This whole book so far has been all about like making Nebuchadnezzar bow before their God Yahweh, right? And I'm like, why? This doesn't make any fucking sense to me.
Yeah.
But okay, I feel like this is just like people in the future after the Babylonian exile going, yeah, he totally fucking loved God. You see how much he loved God? He loved him a lot.
And he came around at the end.
Yeah.
You should too, guys.
So anyway, that was the gist of Daniel chapter 4.
It was.
Which means that today we're getting into
Daniel chapter 5. But something that's really funny that I have to say before you stop the recording here.
Yeah.
Is my notes all say Ezekiel. And so I've been trying so fucking hard to say Daniel.
Yeah.
Daniel.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the one. That's the one
when
we're
you
in.
said Daniel chapter 4, I saw it says Ezekiel in my notes and I was like, oh shit. Okay, yes. Daniel chapter 5. Let's do it.
All right.
All right, we are getting into Daniel, Big D, chapter 5.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before we start that, I need to say, as I do,
Yeah.
that this book is divided into 2 parts. We are in the first part, which is chapters 1 through 6, and they are a set of 6 court tales.
Okay.
They talk about what it's like to be at court.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Well, it's kind of like the introduction to the Daniel and crew.
Right.
The Scooby Gang.
Daniel and his homies.
Yeah.
And then the second part is chapters 7 through 12, which are for apocalyptic visions.
Okay. Good times.
So we are still in the court tales before we get into the apocalyptic visions.
All right.
And also,
thus far, the continuity of these stories has been piss poor.
I'm so actually glad that you said that, because I was about to say one more note before I move on. Chapter 5 is out of place.
Of course it is. I don't think there's been a single one in place.
No. Actually, though, this one is noted as being out of place. So
Wow.
it's not
So
just...
specifically, this one's worse than the others?
Yes. It should come in after the 7th and 8th chapters. So,
Okay.
this makes some of the chronology of the story hard to follow, and like who's father and who's son and stuff like that. So, just wanted to kind of put that out there before we get into this.
But if we waited until 7 and 8, then we're into the
apocalyptic
vision stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
I just wanted to put that kind of in there just to say it. So, all right.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is Daniel chapter 5.
Got it.
King Belshazzar, who the fuck they,
Right.
gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine with them.
Okay.
While Belshazzar was drinking his wine, he gave orders to bring in the gold and silver goblets that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them.
Okay.
Now,
So we're a generation on here.
Might be a couple generations, because from what I was reading, Nebuchadnezzar is not his actual father. It's one of his forefathers, like his grandfather or even great grandfather.
Got it. Okay.
So,
but wait, we're still supposed to still assume though that Daniel's alive here, or what's?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
But let us keep in mind that these kings did not like stay on the throne for like decades and decades and decades before they died.
Right.
So it is possible that Daniel did outlive many kings.
And also, we don't know yet, but this is also supposed to be in with the apocalyptic visions.
Right.
So this might be set in a time that, is ahead. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to put that. It's not his daddy. Okay?
Got it. Yeah.
It's just like, remember that time when one of the grandfathers, Nebuchadnezzar, like he took those gold and silver goblets? I'm going to drink out of that. You want to drink with me, all you 1,000 people?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's about to, do some shit.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he's going to have his wives and his concubines drink from them as well.
Got it.
So they brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. As they drank the wine, they praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone.
So apparently Nebuchadnezzar taking, saying that Yahweh is the God of all gods and the most, high and all that.
The feeling didn't get passed down.
It didn't get passed down, apparently, yeah.
But I mean, it didn't even get passed down among the Jews.
Right.
So.
No, I know.
Do you really expect that the Babylonians gave a fuck?
But this is, I think that aspect of the accounts in the Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of Yahweh, of God, whatever. That's partly what makes it so not believable.
Right.
Right? Like, if there was a God that truly felt like it was God,
mm-hmm.
these people would recognize that fact.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And they try to write these things to where it feels like people are recognizing it, but it never actually happens.
Right.
So that's what bothers me about the whole, the whole recounting of these stories where they're talking about Yahweh and God and how people react to him.
Right.
So.
All right. So they're all drinking out of those goblets and they're praising the gods of gold and silver and all that whatnot.
Right.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Suddenly, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. This is actually,
as you would have, a fucking hand appeared and started writing on plaster. Yeah.
This is actually a very famous chapter for some of the things that we're going to learn in this.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. His face, Belshazzar.
Yeah.
His face turned pale, and he was so frightened that his legs became weak and his knees were knocking. The king summoned the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. Then he said to these wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom."
Just to state it out loud, purple was a very sought-after, coveted color in those times because it was very hard to make.
It was hard to get a hold of, which meant that if you had it, that you were a rich motherfucker.
Right.
So,
yeah, I just wanted to make sure I said that out loud.
No, that is good to point out.
Right.
Yes. Then all the king's wise men came in, and all the king's horses, but they could not read the writing or tell the king what it meant. So King Belshazzar became even more terrified, and his face grew more pale. His nobles were baffled. The queen, hearing the voices of the king and his nobles, came into the banquet hall. "May the king live forever," she said. "Don't be alarmed. Don't look so pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him."
Who? I'm assuming we're talking about Daniel again, which, okay, I'm just going to throw this out there, but he's already done some pretty apparently amazing things with regard to one of his ancestors, be it his father or grandfather or whatever.
Right.
You would think that this guy would be pretty well, Daniel would be pretty well known in the kingdom as far as the ability to divine things about weird circumstances.
This is at least a generation later.
Yeah.
And Nebuchadnezzar didn't necessarily pass these stories down to his children. There's that. The queen, who's like, hang on. Like, let's call this one dude. She was very likely one of the either brides or concubines of the previous kings before Belshazzar.
Okay.
So she would maybe even remember Daniel herself from the time of Nebuchadnezzar.
Got it.
And then one more note is that it's suspected maybe that the time of this story, Daniel was supposed to be like 80 years old.
Oh, okay.
So he's no longer a kid. So this is like lots, like a lifetime
many
later.
years later.
Yeah. And that's why the chronology of this story is very difficult, because we just got through with Nebuchadnezzar, like in his prime doing his thing. And now all of a sudden, like, oh, we're like several generations down.
Right.
"There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father or grandfather or forefather or whatever the fuck we're calling him today, he was found to have insight and intelligence and wisdom like that of the gods. Your father or forefather or grandfather, whatever, King Nebuchadnezzar appointed him chief of the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. He did this because Daniel, whom the king called Belshazzar, just to make sure that we all remember that, you know, he was a Hebrew renamed with a Babylonian name, was found to have a keen mind and knowledge and understanding, and also the ability to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Call for Daniel, and he will tell you what the writing means.
Okay.
The writing on the wall, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is where that phrase originated.
Comes from. Okay.
Yeah. So Daniel was brought before the king, and the king said to him, "Hey, are you Daniel, one of the exiles my father the king brought from Judah?"
Yeah, I am.
I have heard that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that you have insight or whatever, intelligence, outstanding wisdom, that kind of thing.
Right.
True?
Yeah.
False? Fiction?
True.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess.
No cap.
According to this, yeah.
Bet. The wise men and enchanters were brought before me to read this writing and tell me what it means, but they were idiots. They could not explain it. They're womp womp, you know?
I do have a question, though. We were talking about maybe, he's in his 80s or 70s or 80s, right?
Uh-huh.
The exile only lasted, 70 or 80 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we're, right at the end of... according to this, we're right near the end of the exile,
he was
probably.
15 when he came on board.
Right. So, I mean, at the very least, we only got, maybe another 15 or 20 years or something. So,
right. Exactly.
Okay.
Well... I'm
just trying to place this in my mind.
Let me finish this chapter, and then your answers will be your questions will be answered.
Okay.
Your answers will be questioned.
Got it.
Okay. Now, I have heard that you, Daniel, are able to give interpretations and to solve difficult problems or whatever. If you can read this writing and tell me what it means, you'll be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around your neck.
Wow.
And you'll be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom. I love, as a king, to repeat my fucking self.
Right.
Word for word. You know, it's the coolest.
Yeah.
It's my favorite thing.
Sure.
Then Daniel answered the king, "You may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else who gives a shit." It doesn't say who gives a shit.
Right,
It just says someone else.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king and tell him what it means. So
he's going to read the writing on the wall.
He's going to read the writing on the wall.
Okay.
Your Majesty, the Most High God, gave your father Nebuchadnezzar sovereignty and greatness and glory and splendor. Because of the high position he gave him, all the nations and peoples of every language dreaded and feared him. Those the king wanted to put to death, he put to death. Those he wanted to spare, he spared. Those he wanted to promote, he promoted. And those he wanted to humble,
he humbled.
That is right. It's almost like you're magic and you're a prophet. You could tell what was written without seeing it.
Yeah.
But when his heart became arrogant and hardened with pride, he was deposed from his royal throne and stripped of his glory. He was made to eat, grass.
Yeah.
Right. He was driven away from people and given the mind of an animal. He lived with the wild donkeys and ate grass like an ox.
I mean, that's what the Bible says. I don't believe this, but okay.
And his body was drenched with the dew of heaven. The doo-doo of heaven. Until he acknowledged that the Most High God is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and sets over them anyone he wishes. But you, Belshazzar, his son, grandson, whatever, have not humbled yourself, though you knew all of this, you dumb shit.
Okay.
Are you ready to hear what I'm about to lay down, sir?
I suppose he probably
You're a king, but I'm going to tell you some shit.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You had the goblets from his temple brought to you. You did this on purpose. You knew what you were doing, fuckface.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And you and your nobles, your wives, and your concubines drink wine from them. Ugh, can you even? You praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways. Therefore, he sent the hand that wrote the inscription. This is the inscription that was written.
Okay.
Meeny, meeny, tekel parson.
I'm sorry, what?
Meeny, meeny, tekel parson.
This is what it actually says in the...
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. It's similar to eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Only eeny, meeny, tekel parson. He's going to translate
Explain
it.
it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Here is what these words mean. Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
And apologies if I mispronounced them. Let's go ahead and assume I did.
Yeah, right.
Meaning, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and been found wanting. Ooh. Peres, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then at Belshazzar's command, the king guy.
Right.
Daniel was clothed in purple. A gold chain was placed around his neck, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. No. Let me finish. Let me just finish.
All right.
I got one sentence left.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That very night, guess what happened?
I have no idea.
Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was motherfucking slain. And Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62.
Oh, for
the end.
Fuck's sake.
Yeah. The Medes and the Persians, they got it.
They're having a dinner and then he gets murdered and then the Medes take over?
Yeah.
What?
That was the downfall of the Babylonian kingdom. That's was
not
the
how
end.
Kingdoms end. You don't just get murdered.
That was the end of the kingdom.
Oh my God.
The Medes and the Persians. I'm sure they didn't just walk in. Right. There was a whole war there.
No, that's what I'm saying.
But they're saying that night is it was foretold before dude went to bed.
Moreover, I'm not the fact. Okay, if Daniel walked in and told him your kingdom sucks and is ending soon,
right?
He's not going to make him the third highest in the land.
He's not going to reward that.
In fact, he'd probably end up in prison
or beheaded.
Yeah, or chopped into pieces,
or get the fuck back in that furnace. I don't know why my forefather let you out.
Right? Yeah. Although he wasn't one of the ones in the furnace. So
true.
But yeah, that just seems very unrealistic.
Yeah.
Not just like a little bit, but like a lot unrealistic.
There are so many times, though, and we've said this before throughout Daniel especially.
Yeah.
When people just walk right up to the king and they're like, yo, king, let me tell you to your face some shit. You ready for this? And I'm like, no, you did not get in the king's face.
Right.
Okay? You didn't. You just didn't.
Right.
And B, that is not what the fuck you said. Yeah. And C, if you did not live to tell this motherfucking story.
Right.
So 3 ways that I, a dumbass, call shit on you.
Well, and this is why, the fact that it's written hundreds of years after the Babylonian exile, it's just people like wishfully thinking this is what happened with regard to their God in this moment, right? And I get it. It's a great feel-good story for your people, right? Like you had these heroes doing these things to these kings that they abhorred, right?
Right.
But it's not real. It's not even remotely realistic. It's just a story that you would tell as a fun, our God is awesome and this is what, this is how it went down totally, know? But it's not true. And it doesn't ring true. There's no believability about it.
There are some, quote unquote scholars who have questions about what language the words were written in. I guess I don't know if those words are Hebrew or Latin. I suspect Latin would be more likely, but who the fuck knows?
Sure.
I mean, somebody knows, but it's not me.
Right.
And I can't remember what all I read about it. But anyway, there was a question about why he had all his fucking wise men and whatever in the room with him and not one of them could read the words.
Yeah.
And the answer to that actually does kind of make sense. If it was something that only Daniel could read, it was something that it was likely that only Jewish could read.
Okay.
And it was not favorable to be familiar or to claim familiarity with that language.
Got it.
So even if any of them did know how to read those words, they would not have wanted to come forward and said, hey, I can read that. That says your days are fucking numbered.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I thought that was an interesting little tidbit.
Right. I mean, sure.
In a very convoluted, stupid story.
Right. Yeah.
I'm trying to pull interesting factoids. Like, that's where we get the writing is on the wall.
Okay.
And you can read the writing on the wall. like, okay, when we say the writings on the wall, what we mean is, it's very clear what's going to happen. And when you say you can read the writing on the wall, you're saying we all know exactly what's going to happen.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, it's interesting to know some of the origins behind that saying at the very least. So,
we've learned scapegoat. That's cool, right? That was my favorite too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a sucker for words.
All right. Well, that was Daniel chapter 5.
Sure as fuck was.
I have a inkling. I have an idea that the next one is kind of a famous chapter. But we're going to have to wait till next week to find out what that is.
Yeah.
So
that'll be on Monday.
But in between now and then, so we got tomorrow we're going to be doing our
Q&A Saturday.
Right. And then on Sunday we're going to be doing our
Patreon.
And then I will get the weekly wrap up together. And then on Monday we'll be back with
Daniel chapter 6.
All right. We'll see you then.
Bye. Husband.
Wife.
I almost forgot what to say. Do you know where we are, what we're doing, and what today is, and all that stuff?
Well, it is still Saturday, so that means that today we're getting into our
Q&A Saturday on a Saturday.
That's right. And what are we Qing and Aing today?
We are in the book of Daniel.
Daniel, yes.
And we're covering chapters 1 through 5. And I have a bunch of notes.
I bet. This has been an odd set of chapters in the Bible, and not very. It doesn't like go together real well.
Well, and some of it is taking place during events that we already read, and then some of it is taking place after.
Yeah,
and it's very weird.
And a lot of it does not mesh up very well.
Right. It's not cohesive.
So I am interested in this Q&A.
Okay.
I think that there's a lot that we need to cover.
There's a lot we need to cover. I'll try to talk fast and keep it brief, but...
Yeah, well, I do want to apologize. This didn't go out this morning, but we are getting it out on the right day. So let's get into this.
Okie dokie. All right, let us get into the book of Daniel.
The book of Daniel.
Yes.
Yes.
And first, we're going to just talk more about the book itself.
Okay.
Okay, because I did not go over all of my notes for that. And also, there's stuff that it's not a horrible thing if I repeat myself.
Sure. No, I mean, you never know when someone's joining us and what they haven't heard and what they have heard. But, when we're talking about stuff that is ancient and we need to go over it, like you said, it doesn't hurt to cover it a couple of times.
Well, not only that, but sometimes it makes better sense once it's in a little bit more context.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Let's talk again about the book's authorship, because we mentioned that more than once, and I think we had some of our dates we questioned. So the book of Daniel was authored during the 2nd century BCE, likely around 167 to 163 BCE.
Okay.
But it is set during the 6th century BCE, so the 500s, the negative 500s.
Yeah, so about 400 years difference.
It's generally accepted that the book of Daniel originated as a collection of Aramaic court tales, which were later expanded by the Hebrew revelations. And let us not forget that I think it was chapter 3 was the one that Daniel wasn't in. Is that correct?
It was 2 or 3. I can't remember exactly myself. I think it was
3.
Yeah.
So that one was almost definitely by itself while these stories were circulating.
Okay.
So some of the other ones might have kind of been together or circulating at the same time.
Sure.
But that one was alone.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
The author or editor was probably an educated Jewish person, knowledgeable in Greek learning, and of high standing in his own community. So we've said all that, but now that we've read some, it's like, oh, okay, that makes some sense.
Right. Right.
The prophet Daniel lived in the 6th century. During this approximate period, I'm going to name some other things that were happening around the time that Daniel was supposed to have lived.
I have a question here. Is it do scholars tend to agree that Daniel is a real and actual character? Or
he's a character, not a
character.
person.
Okay, that's kind of how it feels. So I wouldn't attribute a lot of actual things to this person based on what we've read, because it does seem very fictional. Right. More so than some of the other characters, So.
Yeah, he's an amalgamation of several different legends.
Got it. Okay.
And his name was chosen because it means like of God or high view by God or some shit like that.
So it's generally we can just accept that this is a beyond the fiction of the Bible itself. This specifically is actual fiction in the Bible. Correct. That is based on ideas that they wanted to portray. Correct.
Now, if you were having this conversation with a Christian,
right,
they would argue with you about it because they take this as actual things that happened, and they would have to take it as actual things that happened because of some of the
Christian takes on what happened.
Well, the Christian takes and the prophecies.
Right.
So they're like, no, he's giving prophecies here. We haven't got to all of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the book gets crazier as we go. And the Christians are like, absolutely this happened. Absolutely this dude was real. And absolutely he said these things.
I just don't, even on the small amount of knowledge that we have on the Bible, I don't see how you can read these chapters and come to that conclusion, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me how Christians are like, this is real and this has happened and blah, blah, blah.
They're not reading the things that we're reading. And they're not getting the extra notes. You know? And they're not getting the whole story because they're not reading it straight through.
No, I get it. But somebody that put together their religion did.
Right.
You know, there are people in their religion that have read these notes and do know these things.
Sure.
And yet they still say that they're real.
But the people that do that are the ones that are in power. Why would they change the system, much like centrist Democrats?
No, I completely...
Status quo is awesome.
I completely agree with what you're saying. It's just that I can't see how, unless you're in this for nefarious reasons and want to, you have a reason to share bad information. It just doesn't make sense to me why someone would, and I get that there's money behind Christianity
I hear what you're saying,
like that.
But I think that you're coming at it, of course, from your atheist perspective.
That's true.
Somebody who is coming at it already believing that this stuff happened, as one book foretells another, it has a self-validating coinage.
Yeah, and if you choose to look at what you're looking, if you only look at what you're looking for, you're going to see what you're looking for.
Well, that and there's a place where I'm not even there yet, but there's a place where in the thing where Daniel and company, his friends, get locked in the furnace because they wouldn't bow to the statue, right?
Right.
There is a place in Isaiah that talks about it's a prophecy. You will walk through the fire and not be burned.
Oh.
And if you are a Christian, how can you not be like, whoa, dude?
Right, but see, the way I take that is I look at when this was written. It was written in the 200 BCE time frame, 167 or whatever, and I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, oh, so they knew about this prophecy. They took these ideas and they made them work by taking this fictional character and making it fit these gaps that they needed to fill.
Okay, but you're coming at it with me telling you this dude is a fictional character.
I get it.
These people don't know that.
Right. No, I understand.
So they're like, whoa, this real person Isaiah prophesied that this real person Daniel would and his friends would go through these things. And of course, because fire is used both times and the situation is similar, it must be that this is what Isaiah was talking about. All period. Right. The end. It's self-fulfilling.
No, I get it. It fills that whole cherry-picking aspect of the Bible to me. Like, that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say that Christians cherry-pick the Bible, is that they make narratives fit what they want to see.
Absolutely. And that's why you can't argue with them, because you're trying to tell them that the thing that they believe that they know is true because the proof is in the circular logic.
Right.
You're trying to take that away from them without taking the circle away.
Well, and I would even argue that the New Testament is largely cherry picking things from the Old Testament to make a new religion.
I haven't read it yet, so I don't know for sure, but I get the sense that you're not wrong. Okay, so I was going over a list of things that were happening during the time that, quote unquote, the prophet Daniel was living over in Babylon.
Okay. Yep.
So we're going to pretend he's real in canon for all intents and purposes. This is what was going on.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
So construction began on the Acropolis in Athens.
Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. The Mayan civilization was flourishing in Mexico.
Okay.
Aesop wrote his fables.
Ooh,
right.
Okay.
Confucius and Buddha lived during this time. Okay. Yeah. Greek art began to truly excel. And the Greeks introduced the olive tree to Italy.
Okay.
The Phoenicians made the first known sea journey around Africa.
Huh.
So all of that was going on. The world was like awakening to the realization that it was larger than they thought.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting context because it puts in perspective a lot of the things. Like when we're reading the Bible and we're in these stories, it's very narrowly focused and it's hard to see what that other stuff is. And it's neat to see what else is happening.
Yeah, when I read that, I got goosebumps, not because any of that is particularly earth-shattering,
right,
but because it put the world together in context for me. And that's the thing that was always missing for me in history classes in school and why I hated history. I couldn't understand how it all fit together.
Right. And it makes you understand, I think, if you're Christian, right, and you're listening to us for some odd reason, I encourage that actually, but if you are a Christian and listening to this, it takes you out of that bubble of everything is centered around Israel and Yahweh and this little bubble in the Middle East.
Yeah,
and takes you out and says, hey, this is what history is happening right now when this is happening.
There's whole other civilizations.
There's a whole fucking world out there.
Yeah.
That's happening outside of what you're dealing with.
That have nothing to do with your little L.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay. So Babylon's first attack on Jerusalem came in 605 BCE.
Sure.
During the reign of the Judean king Joachim, whose name I always mispronounce. And he was placed on the throne, of course, by the Pharaoh of Egypt. So he was a puppet king.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And we've gone over this material before in other chapters.
Right, but not in Daniel yet.
Right.
Sure.
So Nebuchadnezzar came against Jerusalem because the Pharaoh of Egypt invaded Babylon. In response, Nebuchadnezzar defeated the Egyptians at Karshemish and then pursued their fleeing army all the way down to the Sinai. Along the way or on the way back, one or the other, he subdued Jerusalem, which had been loyal to the Pharaoh of Egypt. Right. So we had been hearing about this from the other side. Like now we're learning about things from the Babylonian position.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. That's kind of what we came to the conclusion of as we were reading through, but it was definitely focused on it from a different perspective. Yeah. And we were hearing very much the Babylonian side of it as opposed to
No, we were hearing the not the Babylonian side.
Well, we were hearing from Jeremiah and Isaiah or whoever, but
Nehemiah.
Jeremiah, who was like a traitor.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and so he was speaking to let's bow to Babylon when the other people around him were still wanting to work with Egypt, and and they were getting in trouble with quote unquote God for working with Egypt. So we saw that they were working with Egypt, but the winds were blowing towards Babylon through that prophet at the time. Right.
But they were in Jerusalem. So we were seeing the war, even though we were seeing it through the eyes of a Babylonian double agent.
Right.
We were in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're in Babylon looking at it the other way.
Right.
So that's what I meant.
Sure.
It's just different, seeing the same events from different standing points.
So I'm assuming Daniel was, hypothetically, this fictional character was probably part of the first Exodus.
He was.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So much like Ezekiel. Okay.
Yeah. This campaign of Nebuchadnezzar was interrupted suddenly when he heard of his father's death and ran back to Babylon to secure his succession to the throne. So that's why Nebuchadnezzar dropped everything and took off. Okay. Because, times were rough back then. If you weren't there to call dibs on the phone or on the throne. Yeah. Somebody else gonna take it.
Right.
So he had to run back home and,
secure that shit.
Me.
Yeah.
He traveled about 500 miles in 2 weeks, which was remarkable speed for travel in that time. So he was booking it.
Yeah.
Okay. In keeping with the usual practice among conquerors in ancient times, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar plundered the temple of the conquered people, carried off its sacred objects, and placed them in his own temple, which we know.
Right.
In this way, Nebuchadnezzar demonstrated his belief that Babylonian gods were superior to the God of the Jews. So it wasn't just about looting. It was also about
destroying
that God. Yeah, showing the power that he had, because every king believed himself to be the entire ruler of the whole world.
Right.
And therefore godlike.
Sure.
So they could not have
Which is
other
why
gods.
I was calling bullshit on a lot of the stories in Daniel so far, because it just doesn't track in my mind.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So this was a really low time for Judah and for God's people in general.
Sure.
It seemed that the God of Israel lost out to the gods of Assyria, Egypt, and Babylon. The book of Daniel shows God vindicating himself at a time when the conquest of Israel might have brought God's reputation into disgrace.
Right.
So the
Propaganda.
the reason that I wanted to read that particular sentence to get there was because we were talking about reasons why Daniel was written. And we agreed that it was to reunite the people and excite them, but it was also to show that God is not done.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And to try to, the rallying cry for God, not just the people.
Yeah. They had to portray strength from their God in the moment when he was weakest somehow. And this fictional character of Daniel fills that gap at some level.
What's interesting is that by making it seem in their minds like God made them lose on purpose, that did make them come together. And that did be the making a good reason for them getting beat and defeated.
Right.
Gave them the impetus to come back together and to keep the story going so that we are still talking about it today.
Right. Yeah.
So that is pretty fucking amazing.
Sure.
I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just amazing.
Well, and I think that if you talk, like, these are stories that they're really well written. They are very feel good, right? Like if you love your God, that is Yahweh, right? And somebody tells you these stories from Daniel, they're very feel good stories, right?
Sure.
And if you don't have the larger context, if you don't study it in depth as to when this was written, why it was written, how it was written, etc., it doesn't really matter. It's just that, like, rallying point for your God, right?
Like, you don't need to know, oh, these were actually Aramaic stories.
Sure.
These were fables.
Right.
And all we did was change the name of the dude.
Right.
Yeah. So we've talked before about how this book can be divided into 2 parts, and we're still in the first part,
right?
Which is a set of 6 court tales, and that is chapters 1 through 6. So on Monday, we will finish up that first part.
Yeah, okay? We will.
Yeah.
And with a bit of a roar, from what I understand.
Yeah. These were mostly written in Aramaic. Okay.
Yeah.
So just put that out there. The second bit is 4 apocalyptic visions, which are chapters 7 through 12, and they are written mostly in Hebrew. Okay. Now, the Deuterocanonical books contain 3 additional sections,
right,
which we have talked about, and we're very excited to eventually read.
Yeah, which I think we discussed doing them at the end of this book, right?
Yes.
Possibly?
Yes. Just squeeze them on in there and pretend they're in our Bible.
Sure.
Yeah. It's the Prayer of Azariah and Song of the 3 Holy Children. Number 2 is Susanna. And number 3 is Bel and the Dragon.
Okay.
This book, as we've seen a little bit, but it's going to get worse. This book is filled with monsters, angels, and numerology drawn from a wide range of sources.
Ooh, it's going to be fun.
It's going to be so fun. Yeah. Because we've already seen just the fact that these stories are based on Aramaic fables.
Yeah.
We already know that these first ones are stories.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So when it says numerous sources, it's like, well, we know one.
Well, I think the mere fact that the first 6 chapters are written in Aramaic and the last chapters are written in Hebrew, right? it kind of detracts from the whole continuity of the story too.
Yes.
Right? And when you're studying it, when you're looking at it from an outside perspective.
From a scholarly
Yeah,
place.
Because why would that be the case, right?
Right.
It's the case because this is a fiction that has been written and put together.
Right, exactly.
So it's obvious to me, but
same.
We have to pretend like this is like this part of functional Christianity. So.
Well, and that's why I said, for all intents and purposes, within canon, this is the way this story goes.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to present this as this is what happened.
Right. No, and I feel like if I was to sit down with someone who was a biblical scholar or someone who was Christian who had read these bits, I'd have to be like, can we just agree that these are fables? These are stories, right?
Because they are of Aramaic source.
And if we're having a discussion about the Bible and Christianity in general, I want you to be able to defend your faith on reasonable assumptions about things, right? And you have to reasonably assume, based on the information that we do have about this book, that there's something kind of fucked up about it.
I get the sense, and I'm talking completely out of my ass here, I get the sense that Jewish readers of the Old Testament would probably agree with you.
Right.
But Christians are the problem.
Because it's becoming a very important aspect in their New Testament.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get it.
So, really, it just depends who you're talking to.
Right.
But let's get into the chapters themselves. Sure.
Sorry, I know I've been talking a lot.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, you asking questions and adding your opinions is what these are all about. So, in chapter 1, I called that Intro to Daniel and Co. Who Won't Eat.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so chapter 1, I think we said at the time, and now we know for sure, was apparently added as an introduction to the tales when they were collected around the end of the 3rd century BCE.
Yeah, it was very ill-placed.
Yeah.
It was not. It was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
There they are.
Yeah, chapter 1 is just like, it's an intro.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
The education of Daniel and his friends, we're going to talk about that a little bit, okay?
Sure.
This chapter tells how Daniel and his 3 companions were among captives taken by Nebuchadnezzar from Jerusalem to Babylon to be trained in Babylonian wisdom.
Right.
Okay, so we do know that. And we do know that this chapter was clearly added on later.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Nebuchadnezzar demonstrated that he was a wise administrator and a shrewd tactician. And I hadn't thought of this perspective. Taking these young men as hostages reminded the people back at Jerusalem that they should not revolt against the recently imposed Babylonian rule.
Because they have hostages, essentially?
Yeah, they're like, we have your brightest kids.
Right.
Your best and brightest are up here with us.
Yeah.
So y'all probably want to fucking chillax.
Sure.
And I hadn't thought of it from that perspective.
Well, and not only that, but once you have the best and brightest, if you can bring them to your side, right? You have some manipulation tactics that you can implement.
And that's the part that we were introduced to,
right,
was the indoctrination that they were receiving.
Sure.
And so we saw the whole conversion process part, but I hadn't thought of it that it wasn't the only reason, though.
They're also hostages.
Yes.
Right. Yep.
Yes. So I like finding different reasons and different thought processes. Yeah. I just think it's really cool. So, they were each renamed. So
right.
Daniel's name originally meant God is my judge. His name was changed to Belshazzar, which is Bel's prince.
Okay.
Okay. Hananiah was originally beloved by the Lord, and his name was changed to Shadrach, which means illumined by sun god.
Okay.
Mishael meant who is as God, was changed to Mishash, who is like Shash, a Babylonian goddess corresponding to Ishtar or Venus.
So these names are all based on like Babylonian gods, which is very interesting because it's almost like setting up this fight between Babylonian gods and Yahweh, essentially, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool imagery, and I applaud them for using that, I guess. That's actually pretty cool.
It's a neat and easy symbolism.
Right, yeah.
And then the last guy, Azariah, his name meant the Lord is my help, and it was changed to Abednego, which means servant of Nego, whoever the hell that guy is.
Which has got to be something to do with Babylonian gods.
Right. I'm sure. I would imagine.
Right.
So, okay, so these guys were told, hey, you got to come up here and eat. Now, what we didn't realize or overlooked, I don't remember if it was actually in print or not.
Right.
These guys weren't just given food. They were given the same food that the king was eating. So they were getting all the choicest meat and bread and everything. Like they were given high class food.
Okay.
Okay. And that was to help ease the transition and make them softer and make them more pliable to the indoctrination.
Part of the manipulation process.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So in not eating the food offered by the king, this was a big deal.
Right.
You know? And something else that was pointed out by one of the apologists, significantly, the root of sin goes back to eating forbidden food. And these guys were like, I'm not going to eat the forbidden food.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I got to say that.
Yeah, sure.
So because this book, Christians point to this as these boys were so perfect in the way they're supposed to behave.
Right.
We should all use them as our role model.
Sure.
You know, always stand firm against temptation, as opposed to what Eve, that horrible bitch, did, right? So the purpose of the food, names, and education was not just an effort at total indoctrination. It was also a method to tempt them into actively letting go of their old ways and actively embracing the ways of Babylon.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Daniel and his friends considered the king's food defiled for at least 3 reasons. And we wondered, like, what the fuck's a big deal? Just fucking eat it. I don't understand. Right? Well, here's why. Okay. They were like, actually, but no.
Right.
First of all, it probably wasn't kosher. And it was probably sacrificed to idols. So
okay.
It was not spiritually clean food.
Sure.
Also, eating the king's food implied fellowship with Babylon's cultural system, which, you know, was a heathen king and his idols.
Right.
Because back then, like, food and meals, it
very intertwined.
Yeah. Well, it meant community.
Right.
So they were like, no offense, but I deny your offer of friendship and community. So it was a polite snub. So what they did, though, instead of just saying, no, thanks, bitch, and go on a hunger strike, what they did was they talked to their guard and was like, hey, I'm not trying to get you in trouble or anything, because guard's like, dude, just eat your shit. I'm not getting fired over you.
Right.
And then dudes were like, okay, but we just actually only want the vegetables and the nuts and grains and shit.
Yeah.
If you could do that. And guard was like, absolutely not. And they were like, please. And he was like, you're going to starve and be gaunt and skinny. And then my ass is getting fired. So fuck you, no.
Right.
And they were like, okay. Just give us a week to eat this.
To show you
no
that we can
meat.
still do it.
Yeah. And so that's what happened.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And the vegetables was what they said in the story, but it actually referred to all kinds of grains and plants, not strictly vegetables. Okay. And basically what they were requesting was a vegetarian diet.
Right.
And, you know, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Daniel had a long, successful career in the worst of circumstances and was still a person of importance even after the Babylonian Empire had fallen.
In this fictional take.
Yes, sorry. All right, so that's the end of chapter 1. Like, I said all I got to say about chapter 1, added some notes that I thought were interesting.
Sure.
Okay, so let's go on to chapter 2, the king's statue dream. Okay?
Yeah, this was interesting.
Chapter 2 is the first mention of the Chaldeans as a class of soothsayers to the king.
Okay.
I had to look up the Chaldeans, and I'm glad I did because I had a misunderstanding of them.
Okay.
Like, my understanding was that they were a tribe of smarty astronomers who got swallowed up by the Babylonians.
That was kind of my understanding as well.
And it's exactly the opposite of that. So I'm going to read what I learned about them.
Yeah.
Okay. Which fascinating for no reason other than fascinating.
Sure.
Okay, they were a Semitic-speaking people who lived in southern Babylonia, which is modern-day southern Iraq. They were originally a nomadic tribe who migrated into southern Mesopotamia around the 10th or 9th century BCE.
Okay.
They eventually established themselves as a powerful force in the region. The Chaldeans gained prominence when they established the Neo-Babylonian Empire. So they established Babylon.
Okay.
Ruling Babylonia from around 626 BCE to 539
Interesting.
BCE. Yeah.
It's interesting. So it's almost like they were fighting over what they would be referred to as, whether it be Chaldeans or Babylonians.
Yeah, well,
not so much
because they were nomadic. They were like, we're the Chaldeans. We sleep in tents and travel a lot. And then they were like, this land is great. I don't give a fuck that there's already people here. Let's settle.
Right.
I don't want to sleep in tents anymore. I'm over it.
Right.
And so then like the people that already lived there were like, okay, we're Babylonian. And they were like, that's what you think. And the Babylonians were like, well, I mean, but we are though.
Yeah.
And the Chaldeans were like, whatever, you can call yourselves that. And since there were more of the Babylonians, they just were like, well, I mean, you guys are kind of cool, but we're still Babylonians.
Sure.
So it's like the compromise was, we'll let you be in charge of us and live here.
Right.
But we're still fucking calling ourselves Babylonians. And the Chaldeans were like, sweet, that's an easy deal. Fine, we're all fucking Babylonians.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the Chaldeans made significant contributions to astronomy, mathematics, and law. And I was like, tell me more.
Right.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's important to note that the term Chaldean is sometimes used interchangeably with Babylonian, which, you know, is what I was just talking about,
Yeah.
especially in the context of the Bible. However, while all Chaldeans were Babylonians, not all Babylonians were Chaldeans.
Interesting.
So that's how you know. Okay. The Chaldeans were Babylonians, specifically a powerful group who eventually ruled the region. It's more accurate to say that the Chaldeans rose to power in Babylonia and established the Neo-Babylonian Empire. They were a dynamic and ambitious people who managed to overtake the existing Babylonian ruling class. Okay. Because they were smart. Right. They made remarkable advancements in astronomy and mathematics, laying the foundation for much of our modern understanding of astronomy. Okay?
Got it. Yeah.
They were, okay, with regard to astronomy, they were meticulous observers of the celestial bodies, recording their movements and positions with great accuracy, like very good accuracy.
Right.
Using their detailed observations, they developed sophisticated methods to predict eclipses, the movements of planets, and other astronomical phenomena. So they were fucking smart.
Yeah.
They divided the day into 24 hours.
Wow.
The hour into 60 minutes, and the minute into 60 seconds.
No shit.
A system we still use today.
Wow, that's pretty cool, actually.
I'm like, okay, Chaldeans.
Yeah.
I would live under your rule. You know, you're smart and good.
I just something I because I was kind of curious while we're sitting here talking about it, but I think part of the reason that we have them intermixed in the Bible is because one of the first famous Chaldeans to rule Babylon was Nebuchadnezzar II. So like it's part of kind of the story that we're learning about here.
Right.
So
and I didn't even realize that.
Right.
Wow.
I thought that was interesting. So that's probably why there's this confusion. They were coming to power at the same time. They were part of this community that is Babylon, but this group of Chaldeans is coming to power. Right. So that's where the confusion probably settled in a little bit with
like
some of that.
Who is who? Yes.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All right. So they divided the sky into constellations, forming the basic for the zodiac today.
Cool.
They developed a base 60 number system, which influenced our modern system of measuring angles, time, and geographic coordinates.
See, now I feel a little bit jealous right now because we're spending all this time talking about God and Yahweh and the Israelites, but I'd really like to talk about the Chaldeans.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I'm going to take a minute.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what we're doing here for this little section.
Yeah, no, they're so much cooler.
They're so cool, right? Like, we're supposed to be talking about chapter 2, and I'm like, I'll get there. I need to talk about the Chaldeans. They're so fucking smart.
Right.
Their mathematicians made significant progress in arithmetic and geometry, essential for their astronomical calculations and architectural endeavors.
Okay.
When the Chaldeans admitted that they could neither reveal nor interpret the king's dream, a furious Nebuchadnezzar sentenced all his wise men to death. Remember?
Yeah, I do remember they were going to chop them into pieces.
That's what he was going to do. He gave a command to destroy all the wise men. So all the wise men were Chaldeans.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But Daniel wasn't called as one of them.
Well, he was going to be murdered with them. Like that was part because the guard went to go.
But he was not called into the court. Like Nebuchadnezzar goes, "Hey, all you wise men, get up in here and tell me, what did I dream again now? And what the fuck did it mean? And they all came running because, as you do, when your king calls, you run.
For sure.
Except Daniel didn't.
Right.
And so then he's like, fuck all of you. You're all dead. And so then he like sent his guards out, and the guard found Daniel and was like, oh, okay, you're supposed to be dead, though. So that wasn't cool. Now, I found this little tidbit interesting.
Okay.
As a new king, Nebuchadnezzar perhaps used the situation to test the suitability of his father's old advisors. The dream provided him with a good reason to clean house.
Ah.
Which I was like, damn. Okay.
All right. That makes sense.
That is political intrigue that I am here for.
Now, that's we're assuming that this actually happened, right? But it's hard to, like, this is part of a story that was written 400 years later. Mm-hmm. And maybe something like that happened, but maybe it didn't also. Or at least not in the same way.
Here's the thing. It's really hard to separate the two. Yeah. Because some of this shit actually did happen. Some of these people actually did exist. Nebuchadnezzar, for example. Right. So it's kind of like when we talk about Solomon. Yeah. Do you remember Solomon? Like, we had all these stories in the Song of Solomon. It's like you're giving all of these stories to a person who actually existed, and some of the stories might have a kernel of truth in them. Right. And that's what's happening here.
Sure. And I think it was important for them to write a kernel of truth, because part of this whole endeavor to write Daniel by these people that were writing this 400 years later, or bringing these together 400 years later, whatever the case was, it was to instill some sense of pride in the Israeli community, in the Hebrew community. Like that's what their whole point of this was. It feels like.
Right. So they had to have believable parts in order for the people to be like, yeah, that tracks with what I know that happened 400 years ago or whatever.
I mean, that's how you do propaganda, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. The best lie has the hint of truth.
Yeah, definitely.
So with regard to the interpretation of the dream, okay?
Yep.
The Chaldean Empire, represented by the head of gold, the Medo-Persian, then the Macedonian or Grecian, and then the Roman, okay, from top to bottom.
Sure.
Okay. The Roman, which should break every other kingdom into pieces, but which in its last stage should be divided into 10 kingdoms, represented by the 10 toes of the image. Okay. Right. So here's the problem with that. That didn't happen.
Right.
So the Babylonian Empire stood for 66 years. The Medo-Persian Empire, and by Medo, I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. It's the Medes. Okay. It's the Persians and the Medes combined. Okay. All right. So the Medo-Persian Empire stood for 208 years. Wow. The Grecian Empire stood for 185 years. The Roman Empire stood for more than 500 years.
Sure.
Liberal commentators do not believe that the fourth kingdom is Rome. They say it's Greece because they separate the Medes and the Persians. So they would say the head is the Chaldeans. The next one is the Medes. The next one is the Persians. And the next one, instead of being Macedonia or Greek, it would just be Rome.
Got it.
Okay. So they're like, no, it's Rome. Not Rome, it's Greece. Okay. And that the second and the third kingdoms are Media and Persia, respectively, instead of the Medo-Persian empire as a whole. So I got those all mixed up, but what the fuck ever.
Sure.
The point is, we interpret it one way and Christians interpret it another way. And either way, it didn't happen. So it really doesn't fucking matter.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
They interpret this way because they believe it was impossible. Liberals like me and you interpret it this way because they believe it was impossible for Daniel to predict the rise of these empires.
Right.
Which it was impossible for him to predict the rise of these empires.
Because it doesn't even exist. So
right.
That's
Exactly. Right. So whatever, dude. All right. So I'm going to read a verse. It's chapter 2, verse 44.
Okay.
In the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it itself will endure forever. Okay. Now, given that Roman history provides no fulfillment of this federation of kings, this prophecy must still be in the future.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
Since the fall of the Roman Empire, there has never been a world-dominating empire equal to Rome. Christians believe that the Roman Empire, in some form or another, will be revived under the leadership of the final fallen dictator, the Antichrist.
Which is why the United States gets kind of thrown into this mix a lot, right here.
Yeah.
This is the reason. Okay. Because we often get this attributed to our rise in power, our place in history.
We are clearly the force that is combining the world into one. We are that horrible nation. We're not Roman, but we also do get compared to the Roman Empire quite often. Yeah. Usually in a negative light.
Right.
And for good reason.
Yep.
And I would say I don't believe in any of this, but if anybody's the fucking Antichrist, it's definitely Trump.
I mean, look, the way I view this is that in modern history, in the now, in the right here and now, right? This plays very well into the hands of people who are the apocalyptic people in Christianity, right? Like they love
always the end times.
They love the doom and gloom. They love the end of times. They love the fact that the figureheads in our politicians can be related to biblical things, and so they love to compare and contrast these two things that they have learned about the Bible, right? And it just makes it that much more relevant to people today and that much more scary. So when you can scare people into believing that these things in the Bible were written about today's politicians in our country and specifically, you are able to that much more effectively scare your parishioners.
Exactly.
And that's why we hear that a lot, I feel.
Yep. You're not wrong. All right. Chapter 3 is the furnace.
Yes.
Okay. There is an obvious link between Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel chapter 2 and the giant structure he made in chapter 3.
Okay.
It seems that Nebuchadnezzar deliberately made an entire statue of gold as if to say that the day of his reign and authority would never end. So in the dream, only the head was of gold.
Right.
And God was like, that's because you're going to get it. You're strong and good and pretty, but you're not lasting forever. Bye.
Right. Yeah.
And he's like, I'll show you.
I'll make a whole fucking statue of gold.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Contrary to God's declared plan as revealed in his dream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Within Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom were people of many races, languages, and religions. In a plan to create greater unity among these people, Nebuchadnezzar made a huge image as a national religious symbol and demanded that all citizens, great and small, bow before it. He set up the image in open plain country where it could be seen from afar. So that's why it was so big.
Right.
He wanted it to be seen by all his people.
Sure.
Okay. The image was more like a stylized obelisk rather than a normal statue, being 90 feet high and 9 feet wide. Totally a phallic symbol.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Being so large, it was likely not made of solid gold, but probably wood overlaid with gold, which was a common method of construction at that time. And I think I even said that while we were reading it.
You did. And I'm just going to point this out one more time here. We are talking about something that people wrote about 400 years after the fact, and we don't actually know probably that this thing actually existed.
Right.
Other than the account in Daniel, right?
Exactly.
So it's not... This is
that's not necessarily true. They have found some large, giant structures that they postulate could be that statue.
Okay.
Because it's like made of, I want to say like petrified wood or some shit. Clearly it wouldn't have the gold covering on it anymore.
Right.
But there have been things found that are like, maybe this is the... So I don't know. Do with that what you will. So Nebuchadnezzar called all the officials, right? So I'm going to read a verse. Chapter 3, verse 2. He then summoned the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials to come to the dedication of the image he had set up. And I remember when we were reading that, we were like, what the fuck is a satrap? Whatever. I guess it's an official of some sort.
Got it.
Because all the other guys were officials, right?
Right.
So a satrap was a governor of a province in the ancient Persian and Median empires, and in some of their successor empires. The term satrap is a Greek transliteration of an old Iranian word, which means protector of the kingdom or keeper of the province.
Okay.
It refers to a specific category of public officials. Okay, so yeah, we were right. It is an official, but it just was another word for it.
Got it.
And borrowed from, the language that came before it.
Right. I got you.
I'm going to read another verse here.
Before you do that, real quick, I did want to point out, I did do a quick search about the statue from Nebuchadnezzar, and there's not any historical account of it outside of the Bible. It's not to say that there couldn't have been something similar, but there is no historical record written down anywhere else about it, and it is often thought that it was just used as a symbolic or literary device. So
that makes sense.
But that's just quick search, just curious, because I was curious. I
will get into some stuff that we actually have found that is in museums today.
Okay.
That is not that.
Right.
So,
okay. Sure.
Which I always find interesting when people and things do exist.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Okay, so chapter 3, verse 5 reads, "As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up."
Right.
Okay, so the use of the Aramaic words for lyre, psaltery, and symphony, which those words are not in our translation.
Right.
Lyre is, but psaltery and symphony are not.
Okay.
But in the earlier book, they actually are those words.
Okay.
So they suggest that the book of Daniel was written hundreds of years after the time of Daniel, as these particular words are borrowed from Greek words. And Daniel did not really have these words at his disposal in the 6th century BCE, and they did not come into the Hebrew vocabulary until the 3rd century BCE.
So this is part of our ability to place the account.
How a thing is written, the
part
words
of it,
used.
At a later date, at least. So that's interesting. Okay.
Because when they know a thing that they shouldn't know,
right,
that doesn't mean that they're brilliant, and it means that they're post-dating.
Yeah, exactly.
Backdating.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so let's read a couple more verses here. Chapter 3, verses 23 and 24. "And these 3 men, finally tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, 'Hey, weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?' They replied, 'Certainly, your majesty,'" because he saw 4, right? So the Septuagint, and that's the Greek translation, says in Daniel chapter 3, verse 24, that Nebuchadnezzar's attention was caught when he heard the men singing praises within the furnace. So he heard them singing.
Wow.
Okay? Yeah.
All right.
So I just thought that was an interesting tidbit. Didn't answer any questions, but, neither did the tidbit about the Chaldeans.
Sure.
I just like to insert interesting things when I find them.
Yeah.
Okay. And here we're going to get into the thing that I read, or that I discussed about the fire being mentioned in Isaiah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Isaiah chapter 43, verses 1 and 2. "But now this is what the Lord says. He who created you, Jacob, he who formed you, Israel, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior."
Okay.
So that is supposed to be foretelling, like, oh my God, and then it came true in Daniel. What? And I'm like, what about the water part?
Right.
So anyway, whatever. That concludes chapter 3. Let's move into chapter 4.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that one is the king's madness.
Okay.
So chapter 4, verse 5 reads, "I had a dream that made me afraid. As I was lying in bed, the images and visions that passed through my mind terrified me. There is a note that this is not the same dream as from Daniel chapter 2.
Right.
Like, remember we had a question about it and we were like, but he didn't tell him. Oh, wait, no, it's a different dream. For sure, it's not the same dream.
Okay. Yeah.
So, verse 8 reads, "Finally, Daniel came into my presence and I told him the dream. He is called Belteshazzar, after the name of my God, and the spirit of the holy gods is in him."
I'm going to just stop here for just a moment, because the fact that it is not the same dream kind of calls into question the validity of a lot of the stories, because we're talking about multiple accounts of things where Nebuchadnezzar literally like starts saying that this God Yahweh is the most powerful, the most right, the most correct God on the planet, right?
He keeps getting like taught that God is great, God is good.
How many times does it take him to learn the same fucking thing over and over again?
I do have an answer to that.
Okay.
I'm not there yet, though.
Is he hardening Nebuchadnezzar's heart too?
No.
Is this like Pharaoh or what?
No, it's not that.
Okay.
I will get to it.
All right.
Okay. So before Daniel interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the king considered the Babylonian deity Bel his god.
Sure.
Okay. By referring to his god when he named dude, and by saying, he is called Belteshazzar after the name of my God,
right.
And the spirit of the holy gods is in him. So by referring to his God, he is indicating that what he saw previously with Daniel and the 3 Hebrew young men, it was enough to impress him, but not enough to convert him. So he's like, I recognize that your God is great. He is a great God indeed. And I do celebrate him, and I do recognize that you guys get a free pass and nobody's going to fuck with you because I recognize your God. He's not my God, though.
I call bullshit here, though, a little bit. Like, it doesn't feel like this is like a congruent tale. Like, this is not like coming together for me.
No, it's not. But I think that is a fair argument. I will accept that as an explanation within the confines of this whole bullshit story.
All right.
Like, that tracks. You know what I mean? Because you can see, like, it's like criticizing a company that you don't work for, right? Or singing the praises of your company's arch nemesis. Like, if I work for Coke, right? And I'm like, well, I work for Coke and it's the best. But I do recognize that Pepsi makes some decent products. I really like their cherry Pepsi drink.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
You recognize that they're contributing some great stuff. You still work for Coke, though.
Right.
So that's the analogy that I made in my mind.
Okay.
He's not converted. He's not like, your drink is so fucking great, I'm going to quit my job at Coke and I'm going to go move over to work for Pepsi.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
So I don't know. It felt okay to me.
Sure.
Okay. So remember how the king goes totally nuts and thinks he's an animal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's an actual thing that can happen.
Really?
What? Yeah.
Wow.
I had to look this shit up.
Okay.
I was like, nuh-uh. Okay. So zoanthropy is a monomania in which a person believes himself changed into an animal and acts like one. Now, that is now called clinical lycanthropy,
okay.
which, werewolf comes from this word,
right? Right.
Is a rare psychiatric syndrome that involves a delusion that the affected person can transform into, has transformed into, or is a non-human animal. Okay. Its name is associated with the mythical condition of lycanthropy, a supernatural affliction in which humans are said to physically shapeshift into werewolves.
Okay.
So that's where the term lycanthrope comes from.
Got it.
Is this ailment where people believe that they are animals.
Right.
Okay. The term is used by researchers mostly in the broader sense of transformation into animals in general. That, strictly speaking, is described by terms therianthropy or zoanthropy.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but then there's the specific thing that he thought he was, a psychological disorder in which the human believes themselves to be a bovine, which is boanthropy.
Interesting.
Right?
The fact that there are words for these things is also interesting.
And
to me.
moreover, would you like some modern day examples?
Sure. Yeah.
I did. All right. So now I am going to read a couple of news reports. Okay. Because fuck me, this is interesting. Okay. On August 15th, 2016, so 2016, Martin County, Florida Sheriff's Office deputies found a 19-year-old male on top of a bloodied 59-year-old male, gnawing on his face, eating pieces of flesh, and making growling sounds.
Holy shit.
Officers tased, repeatedly kicked, and ultimately required a police dog's assistance in subduing the 19-year-old.
Damn.
Inside the garage of the home on Southeast Kokomo Lane, just north of the Palm Beach County line, deputies found a 53-year-old woman beaten, bloodied, and unresponsive. Ultimately, both the 59-year-old man and the 53-year-old woman would die from their injuries. This dude was eating them live.
Right.
In the weeks ahead of this incident, the 19-year-old had told family members he believed he was either half man, half horse, or half man, half dog. Clinical psychologist Dr. Philip Resnick later assessed the 19-year-old as having clinical lycanthropy. This was 2016.
Wow.
Yeah. All right, here's another one. Ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
A 20-year-old man was admitted to a mental hospital due to his increasingly agitated and erratic behaviors. During his initial evaluation, he was guarded and preoccupied. He had no previous psychiatric history. Over the next few days, he displayed increasingly psychotic animal-like behaviors. These behaviors included howling loudly, running abruptly, and walking on all fours, which is known as quadrobics.
Interesting.
Quadrobics.
Yeah.
He appeared to be internally stimulated. When asked about these behaviors, he was initially evasive, but eventually admitted that he believed he was a werewolf and would periodically transform into a wolf. He started believing this after having visions of the devil years before and reported hearing random voices. The patient was started on ziprasidone, and his symptoms gradually responded, and his animal-like behaviors eventually ceased altogether. All right, one more, and then we're done. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
A 25-year-old man was sent for treatment during a period of excessive hand-washing, irritable behavior, decreased sleep, and acting like a buffalo, as you do. The patient, okay, you're laughing at a medical condition.
No, I'm actually laughing because it reminded me immediately.
Man on a buffalo.
Yes.
We'll have to link that.
Right. So there's this whole series. Sorry, I have to go into this for just a second. There's a whole series of stupid videos on YouTube. If you look up "man on a buffalo," there's like a whole series of them, and you can write me a hate mail letter later. But you'll watch them all, I promise.
Yes, and you'll get that earworm stuck in your head for the rest of your life.
Right.
Man on a buffalo.
Right.
All right, so this dude thought he was not a man on a buffalo, but an actual buffalo.
Got it. Okay. Right.
The patient reported that he had engaged in sexual activity with his buffalo.
Oh my God.
And believed that buffalo cells had entered his body and were transforming him into a buffalo.
Oh my gosh.
He began obsessively washing his hands and genitals in order to avoid the transition. He saw himself as having buffalo body parts and became preoccupied about his appearance.
Okay.
He then began to act as a buffalo by nodding his head, walking on all fours, and seeking out hay and grass to eat.
Wow.
He was all in. He really thought he was a fucking buffalo.
Right.
He was ultimately diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder and body dysmorphic disorder with delusional beliefs. He was treated with fluoxetine and risperidone, and after 6 months of pharmacotherapy, his body dysmorphia and hand washing were both reduced.
Got it.
Doesn't say it went away.
Right.
Just that it was reduced.
Sure.
So this madness that he had, it's actually a thing that exists.
Right.
So there might be a ring of truth to that, because also during the time that this story says that this is supposed to have happened, there is no record anywhere of this 7-year time period that he was supposed to have undergone this madness.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, kind of like Agatha Christie has like a missing year that like everybody's like, what happened during that year? Where were you?
Nebuchadnezzar has a missing 7 years, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
And speaking of which, it was 7 years.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But again, we're writing about this 400 years later. So
sure.
That probably started becoming lore of some type. And it could have been based on some sort of fact or event.
Well, I mean, let's think this out though. Dude starts acting like an animal, right?
Right.
He was like, maybe there was some guy, not Daniel, but maybe some guy that they, liked a lot and kind of put some character value on him and like wrote him as Daniel sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And let's say that this guy's like, how can we make it to where this king is not crazy.
Right.
Or like the craziness has a reason for him walking on all fours and eating grass.
Right.
And so maybe it started during that time, like they wrote down like God made this happen, and then like later, 400 years later, they like further embellished.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know. I thought it was so cool. This shit actually is a mental condition.
Right.
All right. Chapter 5. This is the handwriting on the wall. When we come to Daniel chapter 5, Nebuchadnezzar is no longer the king of Babylon.
Right.
The fuck?
Yeah.
Nebuchadnezzar died after a 43-year reign. Okay. So how did it go from him to Belshazzar? Like, the fuck, right?
Yeah.
All right. Here's a little quick list of who it all went through.
Okay.
His son, Avel Merodach, described in 2 Kings chapter 25 and Jeremiah chapter 52. This dude ruled for only 2 years when he was assassinated by his brother-in-law Neriglissar because his rule was arbitrary and licentious. Okay. So Neriglissar, who had just, killed his brother, was like, me. He is mentioned in Jeremiah chapter 39. He ruled for 4 years until he died a natural death.
Okay.
And his son, Laborasorshad, only a child and of diminished mental capacity. Maybe he was mentally impaired, much like his grandfather.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Maybe it ran in the fucking family.
Right.
As mental illnesses often do.
Right.
Okay. So this weirdo kid, he ruled for only 9 months when he was beaten to death by a gang of conspirators.
Holy shit.
Right?
Yeah.
The conspirators appointed Nabonidus, one of their gang, to be king.
This is a lot of fucking people to go through.
That's how, what's his name? What's dude's name? Daniel. That's how Daniel was still alive.
Got it. Because it was a quick succession.
These kings were like boom, 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 one after the other.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Okay, so the conspirators appointed Nabonidus, one of their gang, to be king. He ruled until Cyrus the Persian conquered Babylon. Okay. During the last part of his reign, however, Nabonidus lived in Arabia, and he left the conduct of the kingdom of Babylon to his oldest son, Belshazzar.
Okay.
The Nabonidus cylinder, these are things that actually exist, was discovered in 1854 and is now displayed in the British Museum in London.
Huh.
Yeah, very cool. Highly recommend y'all check it out. It tells some interesting things, and just, I love historical artifacts.
Yeah, sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
According to Babylonian records, Belshazzar became co-regent in the 3rd year of Nabonidus' reign in 553 BCE. Okay. And this is actual things that happened.
Right, yeah.
He continued in that capacity till the fall of Babylon in 539 BCE.
Okay.
It is most likely that at that time of Daniel chapter 5, Nabonidus had gone out to fight the Medo-Persian army and had been already captured. Those armies now surrounded Babylon and were looking for a way into the strongly defended city. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah. Belshazzar was not afraid of the siege surrounding the city. He was confident because of Babylon's impressive defenses.
Okay.
So remember, this was in this last chapter we read, they're partying it up.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So he was confident because of Babylon's impressive defenses, a system of inner and outer walls and moats that made the city very secure. And he had vast supplies. So he's like, whatever, we're good.
Right.
He was safe inside his palace, partying it up while a hostile army surrounded the city. Okay. So chapter 5, verse 7 reads, the king summoned the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. Then he said to those wise men of Babylon, whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the 3rd highest ruler in the kingdom. Remember, we were like, 3rd? That's random. Yeah. The fuck?
Okay. So really it was 2nd because they're referring to the fact that he's kind of 2nd in charge, but this other king is over there
in Arabia. Right. Yep. That's exactly right.
Okay.
Belshazzar offered the interpreter of the dream the 3rd place in the kingdom because the real king was Nabonidus. That's the one. Yep. And his son Belshazzar ruled as the 2nd in the kingdom. Belshazzar couldn't give away the 2nd place in the kingdom because he was the 2nd.
Right.
So the best he had to offer was 3rd place. And now we're like, oh, that makes sense.
Right.
Okay. In October of 539 BCE, the Persian king Cyrus advanced into Lower Mesopotamia and, leaving Babylon till last, conquered and occupied the surrounding territory. seeing which way the wind was blowing, Nabonidus of Babylon was like, I'm out, peace, bye.
Right, yeah.
He deserted his city, leaving it in the charge of his son Belshazzar, which that's what we talked about.
Right.
Okay. So he's
nice.
like, yeah, these dudes are coming. I have a meeting in Arabia. I have to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Cyrus conquered Babylon by diverting the flow of the Euphrates into a nearby swamp.
And I remember hearing about that from a previous book that we were reading.
Yeah.
It might have been Kings or whatever.
One of the, one of them. I don't know which one either, but yeah, we did read about this.
Yeah.
This lowered the level of the river, so his troops marched through the water and under the river gates. The bronze gates of the inner walls had been left inexplicably unlocked. And everybody gasped and said, God did it. Sure. The taking of Babylon was as bloodless and effortless as Daniel chapter 5 implies.
Okay.
So, yeah. Christians believe this was exactly what God predicted in Isaiah chapter 45 and Jeremiah chapter 51, that this even was put in writing 200 years before it happened. So let's read what it says and be like, okay. Okay, so Isaiah chapter 45, verses 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay?
Yep.
This is what the Lord says to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I take hold of, to subdue nations before him, and to strip kings of their armor, to open doors before him so that gates will not be shut. I will go before you and will level the mountains. I will break down gates of bronze and cut through bars of iron. I will give you hidden treasures, riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord, the God of Israel, who summons you by name. For the sake of Jacob, my servant, of Israel, my chosen, I summon you by name and bestow on you a title of honor, though you do not acknowledge me. Okay?
Again,
reaching.
Right. And the fact that this was written so much later, I feel like more and more as we get further into the Bible and further into time with regard to the religions of, Judaism and then following that Christianity, that we're taking these instances to where we're writing things to make things happen.
Right. Like,
to make them sound like they're coming true.
Like, where exactly did we stop having things happen, and where exactly did we start backfilling?
Right. And that's ultimately the question, right? Is how much of this is just making this work for you.
Right.
So
Yeah. So there's no way I could ever believe any of this. But let's read what happened in Jeremiah chapter 51.
Sure. Okay.
Verses 56, 57, and 58. A destroyer will come against Babylon. Her warriors will be captured and their bows will be broken. For the Lord is a God of retribution. He will repay in full. I will make her officials and wise men drunk, her governors, officers, and warriors as well. They will sleep forever and not awaken, declares the King, whose name is the Lord Almighty. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Babylon's thick wall will be leveled and her high gates set on fire. The peoples exhaust themselves for nothing. The nation's labor is only fuel for the flames.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, and again, if I recall correctly, some of the things in Isaiah and Jeremiah might have been written later as well, right? It's not so like there's questions about a lot of that too, and not only that, but it feels again. I'm just going to say it one more time that it feels very much like they're filling space to make these things more plausible and more realistic, right? Like that's what this fiction is ultimately about, is making this more real.
Finding old prophecies, stapling it together, and then writing them having come true.
Right.
Yeah. That's what the Bible is to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it feels. So do we have anything else to cover today with regard to the Q&A?
That is fucking it.
Well, that is a long episode. We're over an hour just in the regular meat of it. So
I'm so sorry.
If you stuck around for the whole thing, thank you.
I was so interested in all of it.
No, I was too. It was very good information. I appreciated I appreciated it all. It was good to learn those things, and I think it helps kind of fill in a lot of the gaps and makes it a little bit more clear as to what's going on. So that was a good episode, I felt like.
I feel like
I hope.
Well, I hope everybody likes it and poop on the ones that don't. Just kidding. I don't poop on anybody. No.
I might poop on Trump. I mean, I'm just saying, you know, if I had to choose somebody to poop on.
I don't want him that close to my ass.
That's a good point. I would throw poop at him, though.
I would throw poop at him.
Maybe, you know. I
would have a bag over my hands, and then I would pick up poop.
Like, I'm just imagining him at, like, a carnival with his head through one of those things where you, like, you know.
Splat. I'm for it.
Anyway. All right. So that was our Q&A for this Saturday.
Q&A Saturday.
And we will be back tomorrow with
Patreon.
And then I will get the weekly wrap up together and out. And then we'll be back on Monday with
Daniel chapter 6.
Daniel chapter 6. We'll see you then.
Bye. Husband.
Wife.
Guess what we're doing today?
Well, it is still Sunday, so we're going to be getting out today our
Patreon.
That's right. And what are we going over today in our Patreon episode?
We are going to hit Project 2025.
Oh, okay, because that's the thing to hit these days with all that bullshit that's in the thing.
It is a doozy.
From what I understand.
There's a lot to understand about it.
I bet. It sounds pretty nefarious from what I do know.
I spent all day researching. There's a lot.
I can attest to this. Wife did spend all day researching this. So for those of you who are not patrons, just so you're aware, at some point in the first 5 minutes of this episode, it will cut off because you're not a Patreon member.
And this is a special episode to give thanks to the people who support us on Patreon.
That's right.
This is for you guys.
Yeah. So if you're not a Patreon member and you do want to hear the entire episode, head over to patreon.com/sacrilegious discourse and sign up, and you can get this episode. Actually, there's a free trial. So you can sign up for a free trial and hear the rest of this episode, or you can become a sustaining member and sign up for as low as $2 a month, and then you'll get these every single, 2 weeks.
Every single time that we actually do it.
Which is on our best hopes is to every 2 weeks.
Right.
Sometimes shit falls through the crack, but we do our best.
We do our best.
So that being said, are you ready to talk about Project 2025?
I mean, do I feel super prepared? No. But am I ready? Yes.
All right. That being said, let's do this.
Okie dokie. All right, let's get into this. What the fuck is Project 2025?
A bunch of assholes being assholes.
Basically.
Yeah.
When I was researching for this, which again I spent all day doing, the first thing that I came across was all capital letters, not to be confused with Agenda 47. And so then I was like, the fuck is Agenda 47?
Yeah.
Right? So that's what happened today. I had to keep looking shit up when it referred to things that I did not understand.
Okay.
And I did not want to speak out of my ass more than I usually do.
I feel like I remember just hearing little tidbits about Agenda 47.
You would
but
have.
I don't know exactly what it is.
You would have, because it is the manifesto of Donald Trump.
Oh.
So it's not put out by a foundation or anything like that. It's his thing. Okay.
Yeah.
And it details policies that would be implemented upon his election as the 47th president of the United States.
I see.
And that's why it's Agenda 47.
Okay.
It's a collection of formal policy plans, many of which would rely on executive orders and would significantly expand executive power.
My understanding is that Trump has tried to distance himself somewhat from the Project 2025 mess.
He has, but he can't.
Right, because he's still going to use it.
Well, and because the people that are on the board and created it are like Steve, what's his name with the rotten nose? Banner?
Oh, Steve Bannon?
Bannon. Yeah, Steve Bannon.
Yeah.
And shit like that. And
right, well, it's done by the Heritage Foundation. It's backed by the Koch brothers. I mean, there's a lot of big-time interests involved in the Project 2025
right.
thing, so.
And although it's a collection of policies that are specifically put together by him, Agenda 47, that is, many of the policies do align with.
Right.
So he can say all he wants. I have no idea what Project 2025 is.
He's just trying to rebrand it to not sound like it's part of Project 2025.
Well, it's not that he's rebranding. This was already his thing that he put together.
Okay.
And they merely mirror each other because they all want the same thing.
Right.
So in 2023, so last year, Trump campaign officials acknowledged the Project 2025 aligned well with Agenda 47. So that's why they were separate, but they have a lot of the same things.
They're separate but equal, you might say.
Separate but equal, yeah. So since they share many themes and policies, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Including expanding presidential powers, such as through reissuing Schedule F, and I had to look that up, so I'll get back to that in a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
Cuts to the Department of Education, mass deportations of illegal immigrants, death penalty for drug dealers, and yeah.
This episode is actually going to be publicly available on our Patreon site. So if you want to go over to patreon.com/sacrilegious discourse, you can listen to the full part 1. Part 2 will be for Patreon members only. But you can sign up for a trial membership and catch that as well. We'll be releasing that within the next day or two. Thanks. You can go to our Patreon site by going to patreon.com/sacrilegious discourse and sign up for that trial membership right now if you'd like.